I stopped supporting my brother's family after he said, "No place for losers." That's why I wasn't invited to Christmas. Now he's losing it. In fact, I was excited for Christmas this year. I wasn't rushing to finish everything at the last minute for once. I had purchased gifts for my parents, my brother Jacob, his wife Kelly, and their children before the first week of December. I even purchased extra presents in case there were any unannounced visitors. I have no idea why, but I had the impression that this year would be successful. I was really taken aback when my mom opened the door and said, "We don't want you here this year," as I was standing on my parents' front porch holding a bag of wrapped gifts in each hand. At first, I assumed it was a strange joke. I began to chuckle, but Jacob's voice interrupted her from behind. His words, "This is no place for losers. You're really starting to wear on all of us." I simply stood there and gazed at her. My dad was in the background, staring nervously everywhere except at me without saying a word. Despite her uneasy appearance, my mother didn't retreat. And Jacob was utterly arrogant. I had a flurry of feelings, including humiliation, rage, and perplexity. However, I managed to remain composed. "Fine, if that's how you feel," I said, nodding, and then I made my way back to my car. Something inside of me changed as I sat in the driveway and gazed at the bags of gifts in the passenger seat. No place for losers? Tired of me? From where did this originate? I suspected Jacob was responsible, but I was unable to determine why. Over the years, I had shown him and his family nothing but generosity. I had paid for his children's summer camp tuition, school supplies, and even his mortgage when he needed it most. And now, suddenly, I wasn't invited to Christmas? I made the decision not to go just yet. To gain some answers, I was heading back to the door. I returned after leaving the gifts in the car. As though they hadn't anticipated my return, my parents were still standing there, chatting in low voices. Jacob was pretending nothing had happened as he sat on the couch and browsed through his phone. I chose not to knock. "What's going on?" I said as I entered. "Why am I not welcome at Christmas? What did I do?" Without raising his eyes from his phone, Jacob smiled. "You really don't get it, do you? You've been slacking off lately. The kids have barely gotten anything from you this year." Stunned, I gazed at him. "What are you talking about? I've spent hundreds on presents for your kids. They have more presents in the car than anyone else. Last year, you did more. This year, it's like you don't care." "It's embarrassing for us, honestly," Jacob said, turning to face me at last. I looked to my parents, thinking they would say something, perhaps defend me or warn Jacob that he was acting inappropriately. Rather than that, my mother smiled awkwardly and remarked, "But you just bought a new car. You found money for it." I wasn't even sure how to react for a moment. "The car is on credit," I stated, maintaining a steady tone. "And even if it wasn't, how does buying a car suddenly make me responsible for Jacob's kids? They're not my responsibility." Jacob leaned back on the couch and declared, "You're the one who makes the most money," as though everything had been explained. "We're a family. Families help each other. You've always done that." His wife, Kelly, was sitting calmly in the corner when I glanced at her. Her face was hot, and she was looking down at her hands without saying anything. It was as though she wished to vanish. I questioned, "Is that your reasoning? Because I've been generous in the past, I'm now obligated to do so forever? And if I don't, I'm a loser?" Jacob gave a shrug. "If the shoe fits." For me, that was it. I shook my head and stepped back. I turned to face my parents and said, "You know what? You're right. I don't belong here." Turning to Jacob, I said, "Enjoy your Christmas. And good luck with those presents, because this loser is done financing your life." Without waiting for a response, I left. I gripped the wheel more tightly than I had to and drove silently home. I was unable to comprehend it. Was I the villain in this situation? For years, I had gone above and beyond for my family, always helping Jacob when he needed it and ensuring that his children never suffered because of his financial difficulties. And now I was a loser for not doing enough, in addition to being unwelcome at Christmas. I spent some time sitting in the driveway after I arrived home, staring at nothing. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the bag of gifts that was still in the van. I had spent weeks choosing the ideal items, considering what my parents would value and what the children would enjoy. And for what? I wasn't supposed to be here? It became more apparent to me as I gave it more thought. This went beyond Christmas and gifts. I had been too blind, or perhaps too willing, to notice that this had been developing for years. The fact was that Jacob had always relied on me. He and Kelly had a difficult financial beginning to their marriage. He struggled to maintain a consistent job, And Kelly's part-time job hardly provided for their basic needs. With the assumption that it would only be for a short time, a few hundred here, a few hundred there, I volunteered to help. Once, when they were in danger of being evicted, I assisted with the rent. Later, when their second child was born, I helped with childcare. A little while became years, however. Jacob always called me first when he was having a bad day. To be honest, I always said yes because I cared for his kids, not because I had to. I didn't want to see my brother and his family suffer, and I didn't want them to be without. In retrospect, I saw that I had produced this dynamic. Jacob relied on me too easily because of me. It became entitlement somewhere along the line and ceased to be thankfulness. The final straw was being excluded from my own family's Christmas celebration tonight because I didn't do enough. I decided I was done when I woke up the following morning with more clarity. Don't help Jacob any longer. No more incessant presents to compensate for his inefficiency. He could decide for himself if he wanted his children to have the items I had given them. Making the choice wasn't simple. Not only would I lose my brother's financial support, but I would also jeopardize my connection with him, his kids, and possibly even my parents. However, I couldn't continue to be treated more like an ATM than a brother and son. They didn't contact me, and I didn't contact anyone. Perhaps they received the message, I thought. However, I should have known Jacob wouldn't take it so lightly. New Year's Eve was spent in complete silence. No texts, no phone calls, nothing. My parents, Jacob, and even Kelly didn't get back to me. I was all alone over the holidays for the first time in years. Although I didn't anticipate them contacting me, it was an odd sensation when midnight passed and my phone was still silent. I'll admit that I considered phoning, but every time I did, I thought of Jacob's sneer and his statement, "No place for losers." I had been the one keeping things together for years, and they had the gall to treat me as though I were disposable. I would give them distance if that was what they desired. I started to notice a change by the middle of January. Kelly has always been a reserved individual who shied away from confrontation. However, she unexpectedly texted me one evening. It was succinct and direct. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't agree with what happened. Jacob won't hear it from me, but I thought you should know." Unsure of how to react, I sat for a while looking at my phone. The fact that someone in the family recognized things for what they were was comforting, on the one hand. However, Kelly's apology suddenly seemed like too little, too late because she had not spoken that evening. At last, I responded, "I appreciate it, Kelly, but this isn't something I can just move on from." I didn't mind that she didn't continue the topic. The surprise visit. Then, in early February, Jacob unexpectedly arrived at my residence. When I heard the knock on the door, I was in the middle of a work meeting. I initially disregarded it as I wasn't expecting anyone. However, the knocking continued. Jacob was there when I eventually opened the door, and he looked more unkempt and irritated than I had ever seen him. Before I could stop him, he remarked, "We need to talk," and went inside. I folded my arms. "What's this about?" He was direct and concise. "You need to stop acting like this and start helping out again." I laughed because I couldn't believe he meant it, not because I thought it was amusing. "Helping out? You mean pay for your life? I told you, I'm done with that." He gave me a scowl. "You're the one with the money. Do you know how hard it's been for us since you decided to act like this? The kids barely have what they need. Kelly's trying to keep it together, but we can't do it without your help." What I was hearing was unbelievable. Are you listening to yourself right now? You're a grown man, Jacob. You have a wife and children. If you need more money, go out and earn it. It's not my job to solve your problems. He retorted. "You've always helped before. Why are you being so selfish now?" "Selfish?" I said again. "You want to talk about being selfish? Let's talk about how you lied to our parents about me, turned them against me, and then banned me from Christmas because I didn't spend enough on your kids. And now you're here asking for more? You've got some nerve, Jacob." I interrupted him by raising a hand before he could say anything further. "We're done here. I'm not giving you another dime, and I don't want to hear from you again until you figure out how to act like an adult." He glared at me as he stood there for a while before hurriedly leaving. I assumed that would be the last of it for a while once Jacob stormed out. He would grumble to my parents, but he would soon realize that I wouldn't give up. I was mistaken. I received a call from an unfamiliar number 2 days later. I wouldn't have answered normally, but I felt compelled to do so. "Hello?" a man's voice said. "Is this Michael?" "Yeah, who's this?" "This is Mark Dawson. I'm a lawyer. I represent a client who has recently expressed concern about certain financial matters involving your family." Do you have a moment to discuss them? I went cold. An attorney? What are the financial issues? In an unduly courteous tone, he stated, I can't go into detail over the phone. But it involves financial contributions you've made to your brother Jacob and his family. Specifically, your use of those contributions. Would you be willing to come to my office for a discussion? I was at a loss for words. There were a lot of options in my head, but none of them were good. Had Jacob borrowed money under my name? Was he up to no good with my information? Or was this a last-ditch effort to scare me into handing him money once more? Who's your client? I inquired at last. There was a moment's silence. I'm afraid I can't disclose that right now, but I assure you, this is not a lawsuit against you. It's more of an investigation. I consented to a meeting against my better judgment. My curiosity overcame me, and I couldn't get rid of the impression that this was more than just Jacob being himself. The following day, I had no idea what to anticipate as I entered Mark Dawson's office. But he dropped a bombshell as soon as I sat down. He pushed a packet across the desk toward me and stated, Kelly is the client I'm representing. I was so surprised that I blinked. Kelly? Why would she need a lawyer? Mark studied me intently while folding his hands. She thinks Jacob's been using the money you've given him over the years inappropriately. She has reason to believe he's been hiding money, from her and from you. I felt sick to my stomach. Hiding money? What do you mean? Copies of bank statements, receipts, and what appeared to be screenshots of text messages were visible when he opened the folder. She suspects that Jacob has been taking your financial contributions and funneling them into a separate account. Based on what she found, he may have been using the money for gambling and other personal expenses instead of supporting his family. I gazed incredulously at the paperwork. You're saying all those times I helped him with bills, with his kids' school stuff, that money never went to them? Mark gave a serious nod. It seems that way. Kelly discovered this recently and came to me because she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to involve you at first, but given the circumstances, she thought you should know. What I was hearing was unbelievable. All along, Jacob had been deceiving me by spending money I believed would benefit his family on unspecified expenses. For not recognizing it sooner, I wasn't sure if I should feel deceived, angry, or just foolish. My voice was strained as I questioned, Does Kelly have proof? Take a look for yourself. Mark nodded and moved the folder closer to me. The proof. I looked over the papers. There were withdrawals from Jacob's account, significant amounts moving to a different account in his name, and transfers from my account to his, which corresponded with the times I had assisted him with emergencies. I observed transactions from that account, including visits to pricey dining establishments, internet gambling sites, and even a few hotel stays. Unbelievable, I shook my head and mumbled. And Kelly knew about this? She only recently discovered the second account, Mark clarified. She had suspicions for a while, but she didn't have access to his banking information. Until she stumbled across some bank statements he'd left out, she didn't have proof. That's when she contacted me. I tried to absorb everything as I sat back. Does she want me to do anything? Press charges or something? Mark gave a headshake. Not at this point. She's more focused on protecting herself and the children, but she thought you should know in case Jacob tries to manipulate you further. I laughed resentfully. Well, he already tried. He showed up at my house a few days ago demanding that I start helping again. Mark looked at me irritably. That goes along with what Kelly told me. It seems Jacob is feeling the pressure now that your financial support has stopped. He may be in even deeper trouble than Kelly knows. As I gazed at the folder, my thoughts were racing. A part of me wanted to go to Jacob's house and confront him, but I also knew that would only make him feel good because he had irritated me. I said, What's Kelly up to? Instead. Mark paused before responding. She's considering her options. She wants to make sure she and the kids are safe, financially and otherwise. If Jacob's behavior escalates, she may file for separation or take other legal action. I was more affected by hearing this than I had anticipated. Kelly had always given off the impression of being a gentle, devoted person who would always be there for Jacob. I could tell how horrible things had gone if even she was eager to leave. With a mix of feelings, angry at Jacob, sad for Kelly and the children, and guilty for not seeing sooner how far this had gone, I thanked Mark for his time and walked out of the office. Above all, though, I experienced an odd sense of relaxation. This was the first time in years that I wasn't bearing Jacob's burden. And now that I was aware of the reality, I would never again allow him to control me. The request, I couldn't stop thinking about all I had just discovered after leaving the lawyer's office, the gaming, the hidden money, and Kelly subtly plotting her next move. I was in the center of my family's drama, which was similar to a soap opera. I stayed away for the next few days. I didn't give my parents a call, and I didn't get in touch with Jacob either. However, it seems that he didn't like the quiet because one evening, as I was ready to have supper, his name appeared on my phone. I thought about leaving it on voicemail, but I felt compelled to answer it. "What do you want, Jacob?" He wasted no time at all. He said, "We need to talk." In a strained, almost desperate voice. "You said something to Kelly, didn't you?" I arched an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" "Don't act foolish," he yelled. "She's been acting weird since Christmas, and now she's bringing up lawyers and separation. I know you've been putting ideas in her head." I couldn't contain my laughter. "You think I'm the problem? You're the one who lied to her, hid money, and gambled it away? If she's tired of your crap, that's on you. Not me." After a pause, Jacob eventually spoke the words, "You don't know what you're talking about." I responded, "Oh, I think I do." As my rage boiled up. "Kelly told me everything, the secret account, the gambling, the money you've been wasting while I've been breaking my back trying to help you. You're a joke, Jacob." I interrupted him before he could finish his shout, saying, "Here's the thing," I interrupted him. Before he could respond, I hung up. My hands were shaking, but it felt good to finally say what I'd been holding in for years. "You've used me for the last time. I'm done helping you. I'm done covering for you. If Kelly leaves you, that's on you. And if you try to drag me into this mess again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been up to." The backlash was quick, and Kelly called me the following day. "Has Jacob given you a call?" With caution, she asked. "Yes," I replied. He wasn't content. "Has something taken place?" "I confronted him about the gambling and the hidden account," she said after hesitating. "He acknowledged some of it, but he is still making an effort to downplay it." "Are you all right?" I inquired. Despite not hearing it, she answered, "I'm fine." But she was sick of defending him. "The children are worthy of better." I knew things were terrible between them, but hearing her say that felt like the beginning of the end, and it impacted me harder than I thought it would. "Whatever you decide to do, you have my support," I replied. "Thank you," she said softly. "And I apologize for everything. The way we treated you over Christmas wasn't fair. I ought to have spoken up sooner." We spoke for a while, and when we hung up, I felt a weird sense of closure. Although Jacob had ruined our relationship, Kelly and the children weren't my enemies, and I wouldn't be angry with her if she had the courage to confront him. Nevertheless, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that Jacob wasn't finished causing trouble. Kelly sent me a brief text message a few weeks later, consisting of only 3 words. "We're going today." She told me she was moving to another state with the kids while Jacob was out of town on a business trip, which I figured was just another excuse for gambling, and that she had packed up their belongings, rented a moving van, and left without telling him, at least not until she had everything sorted out legally. I called her right away. "I just couldn't stay any longer," she stated gently. "I can't keep pretending this is normal." "What about everything, even the rent?" Sincerely interested in how she was doing, I inquired. "I was hoping you could help me with that, just for a little while," she said after a pause. "As much as I hate to ask." "Say no more," I said. "I'll take care of it." So, yes, I did end up helping her and the kids, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally doing the right thing and not being used. When Jacob returned home to find the house deserted, he naturally went completely mad and called me to vent about how I had ruined his life and turned Kelly against him. After letting him vent for a while, I said, "Perhaps this wouldn't have occurred if you had spent more time as a husband and father and less time gaming." I hung up after saying, "But hey, good luck with that. The children are adjusting to their new school, Kelly has secured a stable career, and she is at last beginning to feel in charge of her life again. I've heard that Jacob continues to blame everyone but himself, but in all honesty, it's no longer my problem. Then, if you can call it that, you have your happy ending." Am I the asshole for declining to celebrate Christmas with my boyfriend's family and not inviting him to my family's celebration? Original post. For context, I, 19F, am from the United States and currently a second-year university student in the UK. My boyfriend, 23M, is British, recently finished his master's, and is now working. We've been dating for 10 months, and he's my first boyfriend. He's been nothing but understanding, kind, and supportive throughout our relationship. I've met his parents and siblings twice, and both times were wonderful. His mom even told him she thinks I'm the one. In late November, he asked if I'd like to spend Christmas with his family. He said everyone would love to have me there, and I thought it was sweet, but I declined. I've been feeling homesick and wanted to spend Christmas, a holiday that means a lot to me, with my family in South Dakota. When I told him, he seemed aloof for a few days. I went to his flat later to reassure him that I'd love to visit his family another time, but for me, Christmas is a family holiday. I now realize how that would have sounded dismissive. He looked hurt and asked, "Do you still love me, and aren't I your family?" I reassured him that I do love him, and things seemed fine after that. About a week later, he surprised me by showing me a flight he'd booked to South Dakota for Christmas. Flights to South Dakota are expensive, especially internationally, and while the gesture was touching, I thought it was impulsive and unwise. I told him it wasn't a good idea. For the first time, he got really upset, accusing me of not caring about him, not being serious about us, and thinking only of myself, all of which are untrue. I love him and value our relationship deeply. Knowing he was speaking out of hurt, I asked him to take a walk to cool off. When he returned, I explained that he meant everything to me, but I wasn't ready for him to meet my family. To be honest, I'm nervous about how my family would react. I'm white, he's Arab, and my family in rural South Dakota is not exposed to diversity. They've made ignorant, racist comments in the past. While they'd likely be polite to his face, I fear they might say something offensive or jokingly inappropriate. They also assume Arab equals Muslim, even though he's Christian. This ignorance embarrasses me, and I don't want to put him in a situation where he might be hurt. I didn't tell him any of this though. Instead, I said I felt it was too soon to bring someone home, as in my family, that's often a precursor to engagement, which is true. He asked if he wasn't good enough, and I reassured him that he's perfect. He then mentioned that the tickets were non-refundable. I started crying, apologizing for wasting his money and saying how much I wanted him there, just not right now. He asked me to leave and said he needed space. I flew back home nearly a week ago, and since then, we've only had brief phone conversations. He still texts me, "I love you," and "good night," but he's clearly distant and hurt. I don't know if there's anything I can do to fix this or reassure him. So, AITA? Verdict, asshole. Editor's note, OOP received mixed reactions of YTAs and NTAs. YTA was based on the details where OOP was not clearing up regarding racism issues from her family and their background. NTA was for what OOP did as her relationship isn't even a year yet. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. YTA. Your family is pretty racist and you might as well tell him that now. Their reaction is going to be the same if you brought him there now or 5 years from now. Your intent is selfish in nature. You're not protecting him. You're protecting yourself from the criticism you're going to get. He's hurt now. Wait till he meets your parents and realizes you kept such a massive thing a secret. Oop, my immediate family, mom, dad, and sister, are very open and totally fine with me dating him. It's my extended family, grandma, aunts, uncles, and cousins I am extremely worried about. Commenter 2. No one is an asshole IMO, but you've both made big errors. Buying a non-refundable international flight without telling you is very unwise, like you said. But you're not being a good partner by hiding the truth about your family from him. You're 19, so I'm not gonna say YTA, but this is an asshole move. He deserves to know your true motivations. I'm sure he would understand if you just explained it kindly. Nearly everyone has experiences with ignorant family. Did you even tell your family about where he's from though? Oop. My entire family knows his race. My immediate family, parents and sister, are in full support and it doesn't bother them at all. My extended family, grandma, aunts, uncles and cousins, have already made racist remarks about him, most of them they tried to pass off as jokes. Commenter 3. Do you push back against that? Have you made it clear to them that this is serious, and they need to cut it out? Unless you're planning to go low contact with your family and live in the UK full time, this isn't going to end well. Trying to just push the meeting off into the future. Oop. My boyfriend and I want to live together in the UK once I graduate. My family doesn't know this yet, and I think this would be another reason to get mad at him. They were already livid about me going to another country for uni. As for their racism, I have told them I didn't appreciate it, but most of the comments I have heard through my sister after they happened. Commenter 4. Bold of him to book non-refundable plane tickets without talking to you. Pretty huge red flag. TBH. You've been together 10 months, he needs to chill the fuck out. This seems controlling and clingy. When you get back you need to be honest with him that you weren't sure your family would behave, and also that you felt him buying tickets was presumptive and moving too fast. You're 19? You don't need to rush things and he needs to respect your boundaries. OP. Thank you so much. This was really helpful. Update 1. My boyfriend, 23M, and I, 19F, have been dating for 10 months now. He's from the UK where I study at university, and I am currently back in the USA for winter break. I made a horrible mistake about how I handled his invitation to Christmas and refusing to let him come to mine, in another Reddit post of mine. Yesterday, I decided to call him and try to fix things, since what I did was so wrong. I explained my family's issues with racism, he's Jordanian and I'm white, and how I was wanting to protect him and trying to handle my family's problems before he gets introduced. I acknowledged that I should have told him, and handled it poorly, but would be honest with him from now on. I also told him that I had a conversation with my family about my relationship, and told them any racist behavior from their end would be completely unacceptable. Initially, he was understanding of my situation. He said my family didn't change the way he felt or viewed me, he was glad I was honest, and he apologized for his reactions earlier. After a while, he said that after what happened, we should lay some ground rules for each person in our relationship. I thought it was going to be things like honesty, trust, consideration, etc. Instead, he literally gave me things I must do in order for this relationship to be successful. Firstly, he told me I couldn't make decisions about things without him first. He basically said that relationships require sacrifice and compromise, and with big things such as Christmas, vacations, etc., I would need him to be okay with me doing these things. He said it was childish of me to be in the habit of doing whatever I want. Secondly, he told me I should distance myself from my family. I actually understand his reasoning here, considering how some of them are racist and not great people. I told him it was complicated, because I still love them despite this, which might make me just as bad? Not sure. I could still see where he was coming from, so I told him that if they ever made a racist comment about anyone in front of me, I would try to educate, and if that didn't work, I would distance myself. He then said I was playing middleman, and that was unfair to him. He said in a few years when we get married, I would have to make the choice. He finally told me he wants my location at all times, and wants me to go low contact with my male friends, most of which are gay anyways. I told him a lot of these rules seemed over the top, and in the most patronizing tone, he said, "You've never been in a relationship before and I'm older than you, so you should listen." The moment he said that I thought it didn't sound like him at all. Most of the time he is the most easygoing and relaxed person, so I couldn't believe it. I told him I didn't appreciate being talked to like a child, and if he wanted to be someone's father, then he should look for another person. He said that while he still forgave me for what I did earlier, my behavior was a testament to how immature I am. He then said we would continue this conversation another time and hung up, before we could even say goodbye. I feel like I partially caused this shift in his behavior by inadvertently making him insecure because of my refusal to let him come. Before this, he was honestly the last person I would ever consider getting insecure. He is very good looking, has a good career, and has always been confident, so I would never think he would act this way. It breaks my heart to know that I caused his actions, and want to know how I can convince him to let go of the rules so things can go back to the way they were. Or AITA for declining to follow the rules, and should I just follow them? Edit. I've been in this relationship for 10 months and really do love him. I told my friends the things he said and they've reiterated the points made here, but I guess it's hard for me to wrap my head around how he could go from such a good guy to this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but please be mindful that it's a lot more difficult for me to look at this objectively. Second edit. I appreciate everyone's comments and support. I have read every single comment and have thought about my relationship all afternoon. I cried when I realized I must end things. I will be texting him tomorrow morning and breaking up. Relevant comments. What is OOP's boyfriend's religion and his family's background in UK? OOP. He's not Muslim, but Christian, and his family has lived in the UK for 3 generations. Commenter 1, OP, I'm gonna be brutally honest here, even if I get downvoted to hell. Keep in mind I've read your first post. 1- He comes from a misogynistic culture, even if he's not Muslim. And it's showing. Why? He got angry cause you chose your birth family for Christmas, even though you guys haven't been together not even for 1 year. B. He inserted himself in your holidays with those tickets he bought. That was controlling and intrusive, not caring. Now, just because you didn't really told him why you didn't want him there, to not hurt him, he's taking that as a green flag to call you immature and assume an even more controlling stance. He's already used manipulation. Don't you love me? 2. There's plenty of suffering in your future if you remain with this guy. This has only just begun. Leave him and spare yourself or regret it later. The choice is yours. OP. Thank you, I have really absorbed everything you said, and what others have said, and am going to break things off. I am not sure if I should until I am back so it's in person or if I should just do it over the phone. It feels mean to just break up over the phone, And since our relationship is long-term, shouldn't I just do it when I get back? Does OOP live with her BF? And what do her friends think of the relationship altogether? OOP. We don't live with each other, sometimes I stay over at his flat, but I live in my uni accommodation. My friends, in the UK, really like him. We've been to the pub together as a huge group and it's always been a lot of fun. He's very kind and funny, so they've never had issues with him. My friends in the US didn't mind him until this entire thing happened. Since they never met him in person, I would send photos of us and SS's of our texts, and they all would say how in love we looked. Before this, he was legitimately perfect. I met him in my university's cafe where he bought me coffee and chatted with me up. He was so charismatic and made me feel so special, always remembering little details and giving me random surprise gifts. He seriously has never been this uptight before. The only thing he did was express concern over a few of my male friends, but I assured him they were gay, or they didn't have feelings for me, and he let it go. Commenter 2. OP, this is classic controlling behavior. He is trying to isolate you from your family. I haven't read your other post yet, but it looks like they are inadvertently giving him the right tools to do so, from your friends and basically everything that would provide you a place of refuge and shelter if you ever have to leave him. This whole, I am older, so you must listen, would not fly even if he was 10 years older, but he is fucking 23. That is 4 years older than you, he still is a fucking immature child. Maybe not legally, but certainly from the way he acts. What are the rules for him? What are the sacrifices he makes? Right now all I can see is him trying to basically make all decisions for you and make him totally dependent on you, while he gives up nothing. NTA. And when you go back to the UK, politely tell him to fuck the hell off. Commenter 3. Op, you didn't cause him to be like this. It was already there and he latched onto the first mistake you made to show his true colors. He's using your guilt to manipulate you and control you and make it your fault. This was always what was going to happen. Nothing you did or didn't do was going to prevent it. You're 19, you just got done being a child who had to listen to their parents. This is the time for you to make your own decisions. Be independent and yet, do what you want, within reason obvs. Don't stay in this relationship. It's not going to end well for you if he's already this controlling after 10 months. Update 2. Hey everyone, I wanted to update on my previous 2 posts. I received great advice from a lot of people and it immensely helped me try to evaluate our relationship. I texted my friends about the situation, and they also agreed he sounded overbearing. About an hour ago, I ended things for good. I texted him yesterday afternoon that I thought we should have a serious discussion about our relationship. He said we should wait until we have both cooled off from our conversations earlier, so I suggested tomorrow. He sent me his usual good night and I love you texts, which kinda broke me. His horrible behavior didn't erase 10 months of love that I feel for him, and it almost felt like betraying him saying the same things back when I knew what I was going to do in the morning. Here's kinda a summarized version of the call. It was over an hour, so I condensed it as much as I could and I tried to write it as quickly as the call ended so I wouldn't forget. Anyways, when I called him, he seemed very normal and calm. We talked for 10 minutes just about how things were going and stuff. Then I basically told him that I didn't want to do this, but I thought it would be best if we broke up. I said that we probably expected different things from our partners, and I couldn't do what he wanted from me. After I said that, he sat in silence for like a minute. I thought the call had dropped, but then he said he was processing what I said. He asked me if this was revenge for what he said 2 days ago, and I said no, just a realization of incompatibility. He then said he wasn't going to change his mind on his boundaries, and me giving him an ultimatum was manipulative. I told him that this wasn't an ultimatum, it was going to happen. He then kept repeating, "What the fuck, my name?" and then told me I didn't mean it. He asked me if I loved him still, and I said yes, and then he said he knows I'll come back. I said this was it. He said something about how we need each other and went on a rant, but I don't remember that much of it because I was crying at that point. I cut him off at the end, and just said goodbye. He said he would never forgive me and I would never see him again since he was that awful, and then hung up. I immediately blocked his number, WhatsApp, Snapchat and Insta. I do not think he will have another way of contacting me. I do not think he will seek me out or anything, so I'm not too worried about that. My university accommodation also has front desk security and you can't get in without a keycard. Thanks again everyone. Edit. His mom just texted me saying she was sad things ended the way they did, but she wishes me all the best. Minor update. One of his friends tried adding me on Snapchat for some reason. Don't know if it's him using his friend's account, his friend wants to know what happened, or a coincidence he added me right when this unfolded. Relevant comments. Commenter 1, NTA, you did the right thing. When you get back, make sure to inform campus accommodations that this person is not allowed to contact you or visit you or anything. He also might try to see you in the buildings where you have your lectures, if those are accessible, or places where you shop or like to eat. For the next few weeks, see if you can mostly socialize in groups and with friends, avoid being alone. Oop. Thank you. Most of the buildings require an ID to get into. Commenter 2. NTA. Please be careful when you return to the UK. Get help to watch your back. He is not done and he does not accept this is over. He sees you as the dumb, immature, inexperienced girl he can mold and control the way he wants. No way will he give this up easily without fighting. Oop, thanks for your advice. I have talked to a lot of my friends in the UK and I am going to stay close to them for a while when I get back. Commenter 3. NTA. Setting boundaries and then actually enforcing them is an important life skill. My mom let her friend and his kids stay, giving them my room without asking. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay the bills at home and moving in with a friend? My mother and I share a modest but comfortable home. Since she and her husband split up a few years ago, it's just the two of us. To be honest, she suffered as a result of the nasty separation. Seeing her so broken at the moment was difficult, but she eventually started to get better. Even though it was difficult, I always stood by her side as she worked to improve her life. She deserves to be happy, after all. My mother informed me a few months ago that she had made a new friend, who we'll call Jake. It looked so innocent at first. She informed me that they began spending time together after meeting through common friends. It seemed pleasant to me. I was happy that my mom had someone to chat to and enjoy because she had gone through a lot. You know, she seemed lighter. As though she didn't have the same emotional weight as before. Jake seemed like a decent friend to me. I didn't want to pry, so I didn't ask a lot of questions. But as time went on, I saw that they were spending more and more time together. They spent time together, went out to dinner, and he even dropped by a couple of times when I wasn't home. Once more, I didn't give it much thought. I desired for my mother to live her life apart from the house and me. She is free to enjoy herself and go on. I didn't think twice when she told me one day that Jake needed a temporary somewhere to stay since his upstairs neighbors had flooded his flat. Why don't you let him stay? I said. Let's assist him. It seemed like a good idea. Then everything began. I thought Jake would arrive with just one guy and maybe a few suitcases, but he didn't show up. He and his two kids showed up at our door. Two teenagers, ages 13 and 15, a girl and a boy. My mother never mentioned that he would have kids, much less that they would move in with us. Like a deer in headlights, I stood there staring at them. When Jake presented his children, they appeared to be kind enough, but my only thought was, where in hell are they going to sleep? We don't have a large house. The apartment has 2 bedrooms and a tiny kitchen and living area. That's all. My mother and I each have our own room. No guest room is available for use right now. I assumed my mom would have a plan. Perhaps Jake and his children would spend the night in the living room on couches or air mattresses. Naturally, it would be tight, but manageable for a little period of time. However, after showing them around the house, my mother said something that startled me. As if it were no great issue, she pointed to my room and stated, "You'll all be sleeping in her room." Wait, what? I said in awe. My chamber? Every one of them? My privacy? My space? My bed? I was totally taken aback. She didn't ask me at all. She didn't discuss it with me in advance. She failed to warn me. Nothing. She made the independent decision that I would let these strangers stay in my room. As Jake and his children thanked her and nodded as if everything were usual, I stood there in quiet, trying to take in what had just happened. I was screaming within at the same time. I was finally able to speak to my mother when they went to bring their baggage inside. "What do you mean they're sleeping in my room?" I asked her. "Where do I go?" She pretended it didn't matter. "It won't last long," she said. "You can sleep on the couch," as though it were the best course of action. I was enraged. She made this decision without even consulting me, and I told her that was unfair. "This is my home, and I'm just trying to help a friend in need," she stated dismissively. "When you're older, you'll comprehend." "When I'm older, will you comprehend?" I'm not a kid. This was extremely unjust, and I'm old enough to recognize when I'm being treated unfairly. She was asking me to give up my place, my refuge, for an indeterminate amount of time, not just a minor sacrifice. She didn't even have the decency to discuss it with me beforehand. I was too ashamed to even look at Jake and his children when they returned. Even though they had done nothing wrong, I couldn't help but feel bitter. My room, my bed, my closet, everything was going to be taken over by them. As they settled, I tried to avoid them for the remainder of the day. While I sat on the couch, angry, my mom assisted them in moving their belongings into my room. That night, I slept on the couch, and it was awful. There wasn't enough space to spread out, and the cushions were rough. I barely slept at all and woke up with a tight neck. Although Jake's children are adorable, they still occupy a lot of room and are teenagers. They constantly use the restroom when I need it, are noisy, and leave their belongings all over the place. I feel as like I'm a visitor in my own house now, and my room no longer even looks like mine. Jake, too? Although he is courteous, he is too at ease for someone who is only meant to be here momentarily. He spends all of his time in the kitchen, cooking, watching TV, and generally behaving as though he owns the place. I've attempted to express my feelings to my mother, but she keeps ignoring me. She assures me that I need to learn more and that it's only temporary. She even had the audacity to accuse me of selfishness for whining when Jake and his children were having problems. However, I don't believe that wanting a little respect and care in my own house is selfish. Am I mistaken? I'm not sure how long I can put up with this. My mom seems to have forgotten about me entirely in her efforts to assist Jake. I know she wants to help him and cares about him, but at what price? Here, I feel like the victim. This is not just her home, and it used to be my home as well. I have no idea what that is now. Although Jake and his children moved here 3 days ago, it feels like weeks have passed. There was a sudden and overpowering change in the atmosphere of the house. It's difficult to describe, yet it no longer feels like home. Tiptoeing around strangers and avoiding getting in their way makes me feel like the visitor. Jake and his children, however, behave as though they had been here for ages. My mom seems quite content with the patterns they've established, routines that don't involve me. The most difficult night was the first one. As previously stated, I found myself sleeping on the couch because I had nowhere else to go. While I struggled to get by on a lumpy couch in the living room, Jake and his 2 children were well settled in my room, which I had spent years creating as my own. The unfairness of it kept coming to mind. I felt like a zombie by morning after tossing and turning all night. However, I reasoned that it was only transitory and that I would overcome it. Perhaps it won't be as horrible as I fear. It was terrible, to be honest. The house no longer felt at all like it was mine on the 3rd day. Jake's children were all over. As if they owned the house, they dispersed their belongings, shoes, backpacks, chargers, and miscellaneous snacks, all over it. Their juice bottles and cereal boxes littered the kitchen countertops. There was no space for my belongings because the bathroom shelves were piled high with their toiletries. And the roar, the noise, my God. There was no stillness anywhere because of their music, their chatting, and their incessant TV use. I'm a person who cherishes their personal space, so not having one was really annoying me. Jake was no better. He appeared totally comfortable, cooking in the kitchen, relaxing on the couch, and generally settling in. I once returned from a round of errands to find him seated on the couch where I usually sit, eating a sandwich as if he had lived there for years. Even though it was so minor, it truly annoyed me. I no longer even had the couch. In the meantime, my mother was behaving as though nothing was wrong. She was upbeat, talkative, and didn't appear to notice my discomfort. The fact that I was being forced to leave my own house seemed to go unnoticed by her. They also had pals over, which was the cherry on top. The 3rd day was in the afternoon. When I got home from work feeling worn out and ready to pass out on the couch, I discovered that Jake and his children had brought some friends over. There were maybe 5 or 6 of them, adults and teenagers, all chatting, laughing, and munching in the living room. They would prepare a small feast consisting of Coke, snacks, dips, and even some alcoholic beverages. It appeared to be a small gathering. When I went in, nobody bothered to acknowledge me, and I didn't recognize a single face. Feeling alienated in my own house, I stood there for a minute before slipping into the kitchen in silence. That moment struck me more strongly than anything else, and I'm not sure why. Perhaps the awareness that I didn't belong in the house while they did was the cause. Or perhaps it was the fact that my mother was sitting there, laughing and talking to everyone as though nothing was wrong. I felt unnoticeable. That night, I returned to the couch, but I didn't get any sleep. I lay there looking up at the ceiling and wondering how this had happened. I decided the following morning that I could no longer remain there. I couldn't continue to feel alienated in my own house while sleeping on the couch with strangers around me. While Jake and his children were living with us, I was unable to get the solitude, space, and tranquility I required. I so made the decision to temporarily move in with my friend. I knew she wouldn't mind because I'd stayed at her apartment a few times previously and she was always friendly. My mom didn't appear angry when I told her about my idea. She hardly responded at all, in fact. That hurt more than I anticipated when she just answered, Okay, if that's what you want. I'm not sure what I was expecting, perhaps some recognition that something wasn't right, that she knew why I was leaving, but I didn't get it. Just a okay, and a shrug. It felt unreal packing away my belongings. I only brought a few personal belongings, some clothes, and toiletries. However, I couldn't get rid of the sensation that I was being pushed out even after packing everything into my suitcase. I called this place home. After years of living there, I was going because my mother had chosen to put her buddy and his children above me. What could I do, even though it didn't feel fair? My friend and I had an amazing life together. I was able to breathe for the first time in days. I had a bed of my own, a place of my own, and most importantly, quiet. Being there was 1,000 times better than being at home, and my friend understood and encouraged me. The bills, however, arrived later. Typically, my mother and I split all household expenses, including groceries, internet, and utilities. I was okay with the fact that it was always a shared duty. However, I no longer reside there. I didn't use the internet, water, or electricity. I didn't consume the meal. I told my mother I wasn't going to pay half the expenses when she texted me to remind me of this. She reacted instantly. To put it mildly, she was taken aback. She was unable to comprehend my refusal to pay. For me, however, it was straightforward. Why should I pay for a home that I don't occupy? Since I had practically been kicked out of my own house, why should I pay my bills? She wasn't happy when I told her this. She accused me of being petty, ungrateful, and self-centered. She stated I should be more understanding because Jake and his kids were going through a tough time. But since she didn't understand me, how could I be understanding? I refused to back down. I promised her that I wouldn't pay a dime until Jake and his children left and I could go back home. I didn't care that she didn't like it. This time, I had to establish limits. I have to put myself first. I'm now staying with my friend while I try to decide what to do next. I feel horrible about leaving, but I also feel like I had no other option. My mother's willingness to ignore my feelings for someone else was demonstrated to me in this circumstance. I'm not sure how long Jake and his children want to stay, but I'm not going to return until things change. After I first refused to pay the bills, a couple more days went by. I began adjusting to living at my friend's house during the time. In all honesty, I felt more at ease in her tiny apartment than I had in my own home in weeks since she had been so patient about the whole thing. For folks I hardly knew, I wasn't being made to give up my comfort or my personal space. I was beginning to feel normal again, and it felt like a secure haven. My mother then texted me once more. It was time for me to pay my share, she said, bringing up the bills again. My stomach fell when I received her message. Even though I knew this was coming, I was still quite frustrated. She had made me feel like a stranger in the house, so how could she really expect me to pay for it when I wasn't living there? In an attempt to remain composed, I inhaled deeply before responding and informing her that I would not be making the payment. I reiterated to her that I no longer resided there. I told her that she had made the independent decision to put Jake and his children before me and that she had invited them into our house without my permission. I promised not to return as long as they were residing in the house. Sincerely, I was sick of saying the same thing over and over again, so I was strong this time. She couldn't ask me to pay for a living arrangement that excluded me, even if she wanted to live with them. I also suggested that since Jake and his children were taking up all the resources I was paying for, he might be able to help if she needed it with the bills. What did she say? He can't. It seems that Jake's apartment still needed to be fixed following the flood, and she claims that he was unable to assist with our household expenses while simultaneously covering the cost of the repairs. She also mentioned that Jake and his children would probably be remaining for a few more weeks, which completely shocked me. Weeks. Weeks of strangers occupying what used to feel like my haven, weeks of them taking over my room, and weeks of me sleeping on a couch if I ever returned made my heart sink. What I was reading was unbelievable. In addition to allowing Jake and his children to stay for a short time, my mother had totally changed the dynamics of our home to accommodate them. She was now telling me that I had to keep making payments for a house that I didn't even feel comfortable in. I was enraged. As quietly as possible, I informed her that I would not be contributing to the costs if such were the case. Rather, I would be giving money to my friend, the one who had truly provided me with a warm and secure home. Since I was now more of a visitor in my friend's house than a resident of mine, I informed her that I would be helping to pay her bills. My mother lost it at that point. She bombarded me with texts accusing me of being ungrateful and self-centered. She said that I was punishing her for attempting to assist a friend in need, that I was wrecking her life, and that I didn't want her to be happy. She kept talking about how difficult Jake's circumstances were, how he had nowhere else to go, and how I had to be more sympathetic. All I could think about, though, was how she hadn't showed me the same level of comprehension. She hadn't informed me that Jake's children would be arriving. She hadn't inquired about my consent to them occupying my room. She made her choice without even thinking about how it would impact me. Was she now accusing me of being self-centered? She seemed to have entirely ignored anything I had been attempting to communicate. It couldn't be further from the truth to say that I wasn't unhappy because I didn't want her to be happy. I wished for her to have friends, be happy, and advance in life. But her enjoyment wasn't the point of this. She didn't seem to understand how much it stung that she had put someone else's comfort, her own child's comfort, above mine. Naturally, I felt bad. I adore her, and she is my mother. However, her remarks resonated. She gave the impression that I was a terrible, cold-hearted person who didn't give a damn about her welfare. How could I not feel deceived, though? It was about the idea behind it, not only Jake and his children. She didn't even consider asking me how I felt about it. She is now upset with me for establishing limits and advocating for myself. I decided to put myself first and wasn't going to back down the more I understood that I couldn't allow her to make me pay for anything that didn't benefit me. My mom was free to decide whether or not to assist Jake, but she had to deal with the fallout, including the financial strain. Given that I had effectively been kicked out of my house, it wasn't my responsibility to support their living arrangements. I'm staying at a friend's house for the time being and concentrating on the things I can manage. I've been assisting her with household duties and expenses, and it feels good to be a part of a family that genuinely values me. Throughout all of this, my friend has been invaluable, and I'm not sure what I would have done without her. I'm still upset and hurt over my mom, but I'm attempting to give myself some space to think things through. I have stated that I would not return until Jake and his children have left, but I am unsure of how long they will be staying. It's a difficult position, and I feel conflicted about taking care of myself against wanting to help my mom. However, I have to prioritize my health in the end. I don't care if that makes me selfish. Right now, I'm not sure if our relationship will ever be the same, so I just hope my mom understands how her actions have affected me before it's too late. It has been a couple more days since I last spoke to my mother. I continued to remain at my friend's house in an effort to concentrate on my work and adjust to the fact that I would no longer be living at home. To be honest, it was an odd sensation. I felt more at ease and liberated than I had in weeks, on the one hand. However, there was resentment lurking in the back of my mind. Knowing that you have unresolved stress looming over you makes it difficult to completely unwind. I was still very wounded by the way things had turned out, even though I didn't want to acknowledge it. My mother had chosen someone else over me, and I had been expelled from my own house. There was no way I could simply let it go. My mother then texted me once more one day. Her tone was quite different this time. Unlike before, she wasn't demanding or irate, rather, she expressed regret. She said that she was sorry for the way things had gone and that she was unaware of how deeply her choices had wounded me. She said that things would be different if I came home. She even promised to make an effort to get me a room of my own so I wouldn't have to sleep on the couch any longer. It was unbelievable to me. Did she actually make this choice now? And why couldn't this be done earlier? It was like being slapped in the face once more. She was offering me an arrangement that was equally as humiliating as the last time, in addition to asking me to return to a setting where I was obviously not a priority. How was I expected to feel better after that? How could I think anything had changed at all? When she revealed that she was struggling to pay the bills without my help, things became worse. I was truly pushed over the edge by this part. Was I meant to feel sorry now? I'm the bad guy now that everything has happened because I didn't pay for a house that I didn't even reside in? I didn't abandon her without warning. I repeatedly assured her that while Jake and his children were there, I would not be helping with household expenses. However, she attempted to use guilt to get me to return rather than dealing with the underlying issue. Her apology didn't appear sincere. It was about money, not about repairing things or repairing our relationship. And to tell the truth, that only made me more irate. I could feel my irritation boiling over as I read her message again. She obviously still didn't get why I had gone in the first place. She did express regret for the incident, but she refused to accept accountability for the choices that led to it. She refused to admit how much her behavior had wounded me. She only appeared interested in getting me back so I could resume paying the rent. I declined. While Jake and his children were still there, I informed her that I would not be returning. Furthermore, even after they went, I wasn't sure if I wanted to return. There was a breach of trust. I no longer felt the same sense of security and acceptance in that place. As I gave it more thinking, I came to the conclusion that perhaps it was time for me to move on. At that point, the thought of renting my own house started to cross my thoughts. Even though I wasn't rich, I had a reliable job and, with careful budgeting, I could afford a modest one-bedroom apartment. It would be mine, even though it would be tight. My own place, where I wouldn't feel out of place or have to answer to anyone. It was both thrilling and terrible to consider. Since I had never lived entirely alone before, the thought of making such a drastic change felt intimidating. However, it appeared to be the only practical remedy at the moment. I was unable to constantly switch between my mom's and my friend's homes. My friend was really supportive when I shared this concept with her. I could stay with her as long as I needed to, she said, and I should take my time. I felt like I was holding her back, even though her kindness meant the world to me. Although she would never admit it, I didn't want to cause her any trouble. I couldn't constantly invade her personal space because she had a life of her own. I therefore began searching for apartments. Finding something that appeared like a good fit didn't take long. It was a modest one-room apartment close to where I worked. Although it wasn't very noteworthy, it was tidy, reasonably priced, and most importantly, mine. I went to see it for myself, and I knew right away that this was the place I wanted to be. The thought of having a place of my own, a place where I might at last feel at home again, was liberating. A few days later, I signed the lease and began gradually relocating my belongings. I am incredibly grateful to my friend for all of her assistance during this process. She has always been my pillar of support, and I will always remember how she came through for me in my hour of need. In the meantime, I received a text from my mother requesting that I return. Her messages were a mix of desperation, anger, and apology. She continuously talked about how difficult life was without me, how much she missed me, and how she wished to put things right. However, the night Jake and his children arrived was the only thing on my mind whenever I received her texts. She invited them to sleep in my room without even asking, I reflected. I reflected on how she had disregarded my feelings when I expressed my discomfort to her. I recalled how, when I made the decision to go, she accused me of being self-centered. I choose to ignore her. I might as well disregard her now since she disregarded me when I most needed her. I did it to protect myself, not out of resentment. I couldn't return to a place where other people's wants and feelings would constantly take precedence over mine. I had to make a decision. As I write this, I'm sitting in my new apartment, trying to take it all in. Anger, grief, and relief have all been mixed together, but mostly I just feel liberated. I feel like I have control over my life for the first time in a long time. I'm not sure how my connection with my mother will develop in the future, but for now, I need time to recover and consider my options. Am I being self-centered by not going back to put myself first? Although I doubt it, some individuals might answer yes. Setting limits and being selfish, in my opinion, are two different things. In light of everything that transpired, I am not sorry for my decision. I babysat my brother on New Year's Eve, but he came home at 4 a.m. drunk and disrespected my time. Am I the asshole for being angry? I am a childless woman of 25 years of age. For weeks my friends and I had been anticipating a New Year's Eve celebration at a rooftop bar with delicious cuisine, live music, and a view of the fireworks. The tickets were previously paid for by me. My brother called 3 days before the new year. He needed a babysitter because he and his wife had been invited to a posh party. He asserted that they had exhausted all other options, including friends, neighbors, and babysitters. He guaranteed me they would return by 1 a.m. and promised to pay me twice. Unwilling to disappoint him, I reluctantly consented in the hopes of catching the last of my party. At 6 p.m. on New Year's Eve, I reached their home. My brother described the children's nighttime routine while they were still in their pajamas. I got the kids to bed around 8:30 p.m., and they departed at 7 p.m. I was thinking about how much fun my friends were having as I browsed through my phone at 10 p.m., while lounging on the couch. I told myself that I could join them in just a few hours. I texted my brother around midnight to see whether they were en route. No answer. I was irritated by 12:30 and attempted to contact him and his wife, but both calls went straight to voicemail. I even tried calling the location but got no response. I was alarmed when I saw a picture of them looking fantastic at the party on social media. I became angry instead of worried. They were ignoring me even though it was obvious they had their phones. I was angry at 2 a.m. I considered phoning their buddies but decided against it to avoid making a disturbance. I also left voicemails and texts. The kids slept peacefully, oblivious to my annoyance. When they finally arrived at 4 a.m., my brother was intoxicated and his wife was not doing much better. I got up and went up to them without saying hello. What the devil? You promised to return at 1 o'clock. How many times have I phoned you, do you know? My brother chuckled and said, calm down. The new year is here. You didn't have anything significant anyhow. I was shocked by his contemptuous demeanor. Did their plans take precedence over mine? Did my time not count? I informed him that I was sick of being treated disrespectfully and that if they were unable to honor my time or fulfill their commitments, I would no longer be able to watch the children. I was being dramatic, he replied, rolling his eyes. They only needed a night and couldn't find anyone, his wife muttered. The following morning, I received a text from my brother warning me that I was being careless. He stated I should be more understanding and that they deserve to enjoy themselves. He even called me selfish, which was absurd considering the circumstances. They mislead me and act as though my time is useless in return for my numerous attempts to assist them. He is now upset with me since I told him I would no longer babysit. He says I'm overreacting and that I'm punishing him and his wife for a single error. But to me, this is a pattern of conduct rather than just something that happens on New Year's Eve. The unwavering belief that I'll do anything to assist them and the total disregard for my personal boundaries. Because I adore my niece and nephew and don't want them to think I'm leaving them, I'm torn. However, I also believe that I must advocate for myself. When will I establish boundaries if not now? Is it my fault that I've decided to stop babysitting? First update. I began to feel as though things were calming down a few weeks after the New Year's Eve disaster. To be honest, it felt like a weight had been taken off my shoulders when I committed to my choice to stop babysitting for my brother. Even though I adore my niece and nephew, I couldn't keep putting myself in situations where I was taken advantage of and treated disrespectfully. It was about respecting myself, setting limits, and appreciating my own time. My phone rang one evening. My brother was the one. I paused before answering, speculating about the topic of the call. He requested me to watch the kids after a clumsy beginning. He claimed that he and his spouse had no one else to turn to and were forced to work late. He expressed regret for the events of New Year's Eve, stating that they had learnt their lesson and that it was an isolated incident. He underlined how much they trusted me with the kids and assured them it wouldn't happen again. He even said that I was the only one who could manage them. Despite my want to believe him, I was unable to do so. They had not only arrived home late on New Year's Eve, but they had also completely disregarded my sentiments, my plans, and my time. I informed him that I couldn't. I clarified that, particularly after being humiliated the last time, I wasn't prepared to be in that situation once again. He did not protest, which surprised me. He didn't exert pressure. He simply hung up. For a brief period, I felt relieved since I had defended myself and believed that was the end of it. However, my phone called once more later that evening. It was my mom this time. I realized right away that she wasn't phoning to catch up when she called from overseas, where she had been residing for a few months. She immediately jumped in and expressed her disappointment at my refusal to assist my brother. She made statements that really resonated with me, such as, "You know how hard it is for them to juggle work and kids. If I were there, I'd be happy to take the kids off their hands." She seemed to be attempting to guilt me into agreeing, and my feelings of conflict increased as she spoke. On the one hand, I was aware that I had every right to refuse. I didn't have to intervene each time my brother and his spouse required assistance. On the other side, the idea that my niece and nephew were entangled in it was devastating. I eventually gave in to my mother's persistent demands, which included statements like, "It's just for one night, and you're their family. You have to be there for them." Just for this one time, I promised her I would. With a tone of relief, almost triumph, she thanked me, and I hung up the phone with a mix of resignation and sadness. After work the following day, I arrived at my brother's place. My brother and his wife were on the verge of leaving, and the kids were already home, bouncing around the living room. They hurried left the door after saying only a brief, "Thank you." As if they were simply pleased that I had finally decided to help and didn't want to give me an opportunity to back out. I couldn't help but note how rushed they were. With the kids, I became accustomed to the evening routine: food, playtime, and bedtime. Everything seemed recognizable, almost reassuring in its consistency. As usual, the children were sweet and oblivious to the conflict between their parents and myself. I briefly questioned whether I had overreacted. Perhaps they truly had nowhere else to turn, and I was providing assistance during a time of true need. However, the resentment persisted throughout the night. I enjoyed spending time with the kids, but that wasn't the main focus. It was about how, after everything that had transpired, my brother and his wife had placed me in this predicament once more. I couldn't stop thinking about how my brother laughed when I told him how angry I was on New Year's Eve and how he discounted my sentiments. This was not a single error, rather, it was a pattern of total disregard for me as a human being with a life and obligations of my own. My brother texted me at around 9 p.m. to let me know they would be arriving home a little later than expected. I didn't respond. I remained silent. I simply hung up the phone and concentrated on getting the kids to sleep. Around 9:30, they eventually slept off, and I was left waiting for the door to open while sitting on the couch and watching the clock. They arrived home at midnight, which is somewhat later than I had committed to, but not as late as New Year's Eve. My brother said another halting "thank you" as they walked in, and I walked out without a word. I didn't think I could talk at that point without it becoming a heated debate. I was still apprehensive about the night before when I got up the following morning. All of the resentment I had been attempting to control was rekindled when my brother and his wife arrived home late once more. In addition to feeling used, I also felt torn. Perhaps they arrived at work quite late. Perhaps they weren't taking advantage of me again. A part of me wanted to doubt them, but I kept thinking about it. I made some coffee and browsed through my phone before checking social media, which is a popular way to divert my attention from unresolved grievances. I found a tale that one of my brother's friends had posted as I was scrolling. It was an image of a welcoming cafe where people congregate to unwind and enjoy themselves. I didn't give it much thought at first, but then I saw that my brother and his wife were in the picture's backdrop. They appeared completely comfortable as they sat at a table, chatting and sipping drinks. I briefly believed it to be an old photograph, shot weeks or months ago. Then I noticed the timestamp, though. When I was at their house the previous evening, watching their children and wondering why they were getting home so late, I came across the post. They weren't at their jobs. They didn't experience an unforeseen crisis. I once again sacrificed my evening by sitting at their house while they were out having fun because I trusted their justifications. Anger and incredulity were brewing inside of me as I gazed at my phone. What were they able to do? They deceived me once more after all that transpired on New Year's Eve, despite all of the assurances and regrets. Even worse, they tricked me into believing that they needed my assistance because of an emergency. And I was duped once more. For some minutes, I was at a loss for what to do. A part of me wanted to dismiss it, act as though I hadn't noticed anything, and move on. However, my anger increased as I gave it more thought. This was a purposeful act of dishonesty, not only a small white lie. They purposefully chose to employ me since they knew I wouldn't consent to babysit in any other way. As if to make fun of me for thinking they would change, they took advantage of me once more. I was unable to stop. I texted my brother after opening my messaging app to let him know that I had seen the photos and that I was aware of his deceit. Despite my diminutive stature, I didn't hold back. I wanted him to understand that I wasn't gullible and that I wasn't going to ignore it. I waited for an answer while staring at my phone, feeling both anxious and excited. It was like adding salt to an open sore when he eventually responded. He acknowledged it. He claimed they lied since they were aware that I wouldn't have consented to babysit in any other situation. The evidence that my own brother and his wife had no trouble lying to me in order to obtain what they desired was there, in black and white. He made no attempt to explain it or claim that it was a misunderstanding, simply said, it was a premeditated move. Stunned, I sat there. There was nothing to say, and I wasn't even sure how to respond. I was stunned by the blatant insolence. It wasn't due to a breakdown in communication or a conflict in priorities. It was deceit and a total lack of concern for me personally. They viewed me as a convenience, someone they could utilize whenever it was convenient for them, rather than as a member of their family. In an attempt to comprehend what had just transpired, I set my phone aside and gazed out the window. Of course, I was angry, but I felt anguish more than anger. That I could be treated this way by my own brother was painful. It was painful that after repeatedly giving them the benefit of the doubt, I was shown to be mistaken. They took advantage of my trust and betrayed it. The remainder of the day was a blur. I was unable to concentrate on anything else. I repeatedly relived the incident in my mind, recalling all the instances in which I had sacrificed everything for them, putting their demands ahead of my own, only to be met with deceit and manipulation. The pattern was more important than the cafe shot alone. Utter disregard for me as an individual with a life and priorities of my own. I made a choice at the end of the day. I had had enough of babysitting and going above and above for individuals who obviously didn't appreciate me. There was no use in me confronting my brother anymore. He had stated unequivocally that he saw nothing wrong with his behavior. But this time, I was determined to set a real barrier. Put an end to babysitting. No more hurried phone calls. No more feeling guilty about giving up my time and effort for folks who couldn't even be honest with me. I experienced an odd sensation of relief as I sat there thinking about everything. Yes, it hurt, but it was liberating as well. I was at last prioritizing myself, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt that I was acting in the best interests of myself, not my mother or brother. Second update. After a few days, I was trying my best to move on from my brother's treachery, even though I was still hurting. I had no intention of talking to him anymore. No matter how much guilt, manipulation, or slick talk I received, I had already decided that I would never again babysit. It wasn't worthwhile. I had tried to be the helpful, trustworthy sister for far too long, only to be taken advantage of and lied to. I assumed that if the matter didn't resolve itself, it was their fault, not mine. My phone then rang. It was my mother. At first, I didn't give it much thought, thinking it would be a friendly conversation or perhaps another attempt by her to coerce me into assisting my brother. But I knew something wasn't right as soon as I responded. She seemed annoyed, almost accusing, and I instantly prepared myself for whatever was about to happen. She got right into it, claiming that after talking to my brother, he informed her that I hadn't watched the kids that evening. I initially believed I had misheard her. She couldn't be saying what I believed her to be saying, surely. She continued, however, reciting what he had told her, namely that they had hired a nanny since I had declined to assist. My brother reportedly informed her that they intended to keep employing nannies since, in his view, I wasn't good with kids. I was taken entirely by surprise and startled. I had no idea how to interpret what I was hearing. In addition to deceiving me and tricking me into watching the kids that evening, my brother was now lying to our mother about what had transpired. To make things worse, he was making fun of me by suggesting that I couldn't possibly take care of my niece and nephew. He seemed to be trying to twist the story to make himself appear like the victim and was stepping up his disdain, which felt like a slap in the face. Naturally, my mother seemed to believe him. She began to ask, "Why didn't you just lend a hand?" She had obviously accepted his account of events without questioning anything, saying things like, "It's not that hard to watch kids for one evening." To be honest, that was nearly as painful as the falsehoods themselves. I had spent years demonstrating my dependability, my concern for my family, and my willingness to lend a hand whenever necessary. However, she was prepared to disregard all of it because my brother had made up a preposterous tale to hide his identity. I sat there trying to figure out why he would tell such a falsehood. Was it shame, guilt, or just another instance of his avoiding responsibility for his actions? Perhaps he didn't want to tell our mother that he and his spouse had lied to me about having to work late, or that they had gone out to a cafe while I was at home with the kids. Perhaps it was simpler for him to blame me, to make it appear that I was the one who had failed them, than to acknowledge that he had been dishonest. I couldn't believe he would go to such lengths though, whatever of his motivations. It was now more about the idea behind it than it was about myself. He was trying to harm my reputation in our family by lying to our mother. For what purpose? To keep one's face intact? To escape accountability for his deeds? I didn't see how he could defend it to himself, and it felt harsh and petty. I came to the conclusion that there was no use in attempting to tell my mother the truth while she continued to speak. Her decision was already made. He had likely been extremely convincing in his account of events, and I knew my brother. I didn't have the energy to dispute because it would just become a he said, she said situation. In addition, I had the feeling that it wasn't worth anything at all. Perhaps it said more about my mother than it did about me if she was so willing to believe him without hearing my side of the story. I hardly responded, letting her speak. I hung up and sat there looking at my phone when the discussion finally finished. I was exhausted, dejected, and most of all, extremely wounded. It was more than simply the lies. It was about my own brother using me as a scapegoat to hide his inappropriate behavior, and my mother mindlessly supporting it. I repeatedly reenacted the scenario in my mind over the course of the following few days. I reflected on the numerous occasions I had gone above and beyond to support my brother, the sacrifices I had made for him and his family, and the apparent lack of appreciation on his part. I reflected on how my mother had assumed the worst about me without even attempting to get my side of the story, and how she had been so quick to support him. And the more I gave it more thought, the more I saw that this went beyond what had just transpired. My brother was always the golden child, who could do no wrong, and I was supposed to take the fall for it. It was about a pattern, a dynamic that had existed for years. I briefly contemplated going up to my brother, confronting him, exposing his deception, and requesting an explanation. However, that idea appeared less tempting the more I considered it. What would it achieve? He had previously demonstrated his unwillingness to accept accountability for his deeds. To confront him would just result in more manipulation, more falsehoods, and more excuses. To be honest, I didn't require such negativity in my life. I made the decision to stand back instead. I began concentrating on myself, stopped talking to my mother about the problem, and stopped returning my brother's calls. It wasn't simple. A part of me was concerned about how my connection with my niece and nephew could be impacted by the friction in my family, which I detested. However, I also realized that I couldn't continue to put myself in precarious circumstances where I was treated disrespectfully and taken advantage of. Ultimately, I understood that establishing boundaries was about protecting myself, not about punishing others. It was about not allowing the behavior of others to determine my value as a person. And although it was painful to take a step back, it was also freeing to prioritize myself at last. Third update: I avoided my mother and brother in the weeks and months that followed. Although it was a difficult choice, it was essential. I came to the realization that I needed time to recover and take care of myself after everything that had transpired. I made the decision to leave it all because the ongoing drama, deception, and disrespect had worn me down. Restoring my feeling of self-worth and establishing a life where I felt appreciated and respected were more important than merely establishing boundaries. I devoted all of my time to my career and interests throughout this period. I spent more time with friends, who never made me feel like I was asking too much simply for being there and who always gave me unwavering support. In addition to trying new things I had been putting off for years, like joining a local book club and taking up yoga, I began to accept social invitations more frequently. I was able to find who I was outside of the family dynamics that had taken up so much of my energy thanks to these seminars. I first met my boyfriend on one of these outings with pals. I never would have imagined how he would alter my life. We first met at a small get-together at the home of a mutual acquaintance. I wasn't really excited to go at first since I was still dealing with the emotional fallout from everything that had happened to my family. However, my pals were correct when they said it would benefit me. I met him through a friend of a friend. During a card game, we wound up sitting next to each other, and what began as lighthearted teasing over who would win evolved into a meaningful, interesting discussion. He was kind, focused, and sincerely interested in what I was saying. I felt heard and seen for the first time in a long time. We discussed everything from job to favorite movies to hobbies, and at the end of the night, I couldn't recall ever laughing so hard. We began seeing each other on a regular basis after that evening. Initially, it was informal, coffee dates, park walks, and late-night phone conversations that continued into the morning. However, as the weeks passed, it became evident that this was something unique. In ways I didn't realize I needed, he was patient, kind, and encouraging. He reminded me that it's acceptable to put my own needs first, respected my limits, and pushed me to advocate for myself. It was refreshing to spend time with him. He didn't have the manipulation or emotional baggage I was so accustomed to from my family. Rather, he helped me realize that not all relationships need to be stressful or conflictual by bringing stability and optimism into my life. Additionally, he assisted me in managing my feelings toward my family by advising me to handle the matter diplomatically while also reminding me that it was acceptable to leave if it was negatively impacting my mental well-being. My father secretly took out $73,000 in loans under my name, ruined my credit, and left me with the debt. Now I must decide whether to file charges. Original post: I, 21, graduated from university with my undergrad in 2024. At the time of graduating I thought that I had around $10,000 of federal student loans. Recently my mom left my emotionally abusive father, leaving just her, me and my sibling by ourselves. I was happy at this decision until I found out that the $10,000 of debt I thought I was in was actually far more than that. I knew that throughout my first year of university he had taken out some private student loans for me. I was told, by my father, that since I was only 18 at the time the bank we loaned from wouldn't allow me to pull out loans since I didn't have good credit. He told me that he would be able to take out these student loans under my mother's name and that he'd pay them off as soon as I'm done with school. I found out recently that the loans were in fact under my name with my mom just as a cosigner. Also that the loans were far more than was needed to pay for my tuition. She did not know this either. BTW. He had taken out a total of $48,000 in private student loans under my name. I remember signing for these. He did not forge my signature. When I asked exactly what I was signing for or more details about everything, he told me, "Stop asking questions and just trust me." Every time I tried to push for answers I got that response. I trusted him. I trusted that he would not screw me over. I had trusted him to help build my credit when I turned 18. I found out now that he's completely messed up my credit too. My TransUnion score is 669 and my Equifax score is 577. He used my tuition money for rent and bills. I do not know what he used the money he got from my credit cards for. Throughout the past few years, he had convinced us that he was making a lot of money from his job. I now realize that he was likely lying about that and just secretly screwing me over, and my mom too, since he's also messed up her credit. I have 3 closed credit cards that are in debt, I think. One is $6,055 balance, $2,250 credit limit, with $6,055 due. The second is $12,864 reported balance, $1,000 credit limit, with $0 due. Does this second one mean that I don't have to pay off the balance? The third one is $6,228 balance, $6,000 credit limit, with $714 due. From what I have looked up, it seems like I owe a little over $35,000 in credit card debt. I also know that he's messed up my siblings' credit too. I'm not sure by how much. I haven't had the chance to look into that. Also, I think it's important to note that he currently owes 3 different family members over $200,000. I found this out this week too. Flash forward to now, I found out about these loans a few days ago. I now have a total of $58,000 in student loan debt in addition to my credit debt. My first student loan payment is due in less than 3 weeks. I need advice. I don't want to take legal action against him. I don't want him to end up in jail. He is currently helping us by paying for our rent and car even though my mom has left him. My mom doesn't currently have a job, though she is looking, and my job doesn't make nearly enough to provide for ourselves without his help. In August, I will start a higher paying job, and possibly pick up a second job to pay off my debt. So I could ask him to just send me money every month instead of paying for rent and the car. I could use that money to help pay off the debt. As of right now, I am not worried about my federal student loans. The minimum payment is doable and I will receive around $14,000 of tuition reimbursement in March-April, so that will help. Should I consolidate the private loans? Should I refinance? I've briefly considered filing for bankruptcy, since I have no assets, but I know that's probably a bad idea. Is there a way for me to not have to deal with this debt without landing him in a lot of trouble? Relevant comments. Did OOP know what they signed? OOP. It was an electronic signature for the loan where you use the mouse to draw out your signature. He called me over to sign it on his laptop. At the time I still thought that the money would be under my mother's name. I also did not know how much money it would be. Commenter 1. I don't want to take legal action against him. Okay, then you're going to have to pay the loans or declare bankruptcy. Commenter 2. I don't want to take legal action against him. I don't want him to end up in jail. You need to get past this, because he doesn't care what he does to you, and he isn't only hurting you, he is hurting and taking advantage of a lot of people, and is actively ruining your futures to benefit himself. He is currently helping us by paying for our rent and car even though my mom has left him. He isn't helping you, he is providing just enough to hope you don't take action against him. And the money is money he owes you, not that he is using to support you out of care for you and your family. He is not helping. He is using money he took from you and others to pay for that. You are paying for that help in the form of increasing debt, not him. And if he doesn't face serious repercussions for his actions, he is going to keep doing it and you will never get out of the increasing debt he'll continue to saddle you and everyone else with. At the very least, you need to make sure you and your siblings' credit is locked down now to prevent him from taking out new cards and loans under your names. But you really need to just report him to the police so you can remove that debt. Why are you so worried about ruining his life, when he isn't worried about ruining the lives of you, your siblings and everyone else he has taken advantage of? If anyone ruins his life, it will be him by his own actions. Update. Editor's note. Remove the top part of the post as it is a rehash of the original post. Update. After reading all these responses and talking with some close friends of mine, I see that the best thing to do is file against him. I brought up the topic to my mother last night and she, being very religious, said, "No, don't do that. God wouldn't want you to harm another person like this, let alone your own father." She said that she'd rather take on the private student loan debt by refinancing and transferring it to her, but honestly that wouldn't remove the credit card debt and it'd leave her with the debt instead. I don't think that's a good choice. I think that if I file against my dad, my mother will kick me out, so if I file, I will already be prepared to move out. That being said, I currently only have $2,000 saved up from work and that will not be enough to move out on my own. I'd need more money to get a car, place, and overall survive. I just moved to the city I am in less than a year ago, so I don't have many people to rely on here. My boyfriend offered to let me live at his family's house, but I'd still need to be able to travel to and from work and I don't want to overstay my welcome. I also don't have the option to move because I have to work in the state of Florida to qualify for my university's tuition reimbursement. In March, I have over $14,000 of tuition reimbursement coming in. My best bet would be to wait till March and then leave. It breaks my heart to do this because I could be disowned by every person in my family, but I can't let myself live with this debt. Prior to this, I thought I only had $10,000 worth of debt, and with that I could have easily lived a good life and paid it off quickly. I'm still not 100% set on this decision, but I do realize that it is the logical thing to do. I want to speak with my sibling to see how much debt my father put them in and to see if they'd want to file too. I also want to speak with a lawyer or someone more knowledgeable than me about this. Does anyone have any advice based on this update? Update number 2 in response to the comments I've gotten. My mom's religious comments are obviously ridiculous, but I'm mostly looking for help with how to file or what to expect. I have records showing $23,000 of refunds went to a bank account he controlled. I didn't see a dime of that money and I think he used it to pay for a vacation NGL. Relevant comments. Is it possible for OOP to find a new place or rent near their job? OOP. I'm a substitute teacher. I work at different schools around the county, so it wouldn't be possible for me to get a job near work, unfortunately. How did OOP's father get involved in OOP signing the documents with their mother? OOP. All I did was sign. He filled out everything. Now, I understand looking back that I was stupid for signing without asking. But, after some further looking into things, I see that the amount of money I was refunded by my school was an insane amount and not an amount I could have spent by myself in one semester, aka $12,000 extra refunded in a semester where my tuition was only $2,000. He must have used that money himself on non-education related things. Also, the credit cards I did not sign for. I didn't even know that you signed for credit cards. He did that all himself. Commenter 1. It sounds to me like both your mom and your dad are in this together. And that if you don't file against them, they will come out ahead, and you will come out behind. Commenter 2. God didn't want your mom to leave your dad either, but she did. So, she doesn't have a leg to stand on when is preaching to you. Report him to anyone you can. Also, if you were under 18 years old you can't be held responsible for any contracts. I grew up overshadowed by the golden child. She tried to seduce my husband, we exposed her, and my mother framed me, refusing her faults. Hello, everyone, I need some help and maybe a place to rant. This will be a long one, so please bear with me. I, 33F, have always had a problematic connection with my younger sister, Julia, 30F. Julia is our family's golden child, which has caused me grief since we were little. Growing up, our parents always preferred Julia. She was the beautiful, talented, and all-around perfect person. Meanwhile, I was the older sister who consistently fell short of their expectations. My earliest memories include occasions when I felt invisible next to her. One memory strikes out so vividly. I was about 8 years old and it was my birthday. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, fantasizing about the cake, the gifts, and the attention. But as soon as Julia entered the room, everyone's attention went to her. She was just 5 at the time, but she had a talent for stealing the show. She began singing a song she had learned in kindergarten, and everyone applauded, completely forgetting that it was my special day. My parents didn't notice the tears welling up in my eyes as I watched them adore her. This was a pattern that continued throughout our childhood. Julia received the greatest clothes, the most attention, and all of the compliments. I recall feeling pleased of myself after receiving a B on a math test. However, when I presented it to my parents, they only glanced at it before asking Julia about her day. She had colored a picture at school, and that was considered more impressive. The hardest aspect was that Julia was well aware of her position within the family. She wasn't a malevolent child, but she knew how to use circumstances to her advantage. If we ever fought, as siblings do, she would scream and run to our parents, who would always support her side. I was always the one that got scolded, regardless of the situation. The dynamics remained rather stable as we grew older. Julia excelled in whatever she did. She was a straight A student, a star athlete, and eventually a social butterfly with a large network of friends. In contrast, I suffered both intellectually and socially. I was shy, introverted, and had difficulty establishing friends. Our parents frequently compared us, always adversely to me. "Why can't you be more like Julia?" was a constant refrain in our home. High school was really stressful. Julia was a freshman when I was a senior, and she rapidly gained popularity. She joined the cheerleading squad, was chosen class president, and boys wanted to date her. I was the nerdy senior who rarely had any friends and spent the most of his time in the library. She seemed to be the center of my existence. One incident from high school still bothers me. There was a major dance coming up, and I had finally worked up the guts to ask a boy I liked to go with me. To my astonishment and happiness, he replied yes. But a week before the dance, he canceled, claiming he had invited someone else. Someone else turned out to be Julia. She had no idea I had asked him, but it didn't matter. She got to go to the dance with him, whilst I stayed at home, devastated and alone. After high school, I attended a local community college, while Julia received a scholarship to a prominent university. Our parents were understandably pleased of her, but it hurt to see how little they cared about my accomplishments. I worked 2 jobs to pay for my tuition, but Julia's expenses were covered by our parents. They paid her many visits, attended her college functions, and were continuously positive about her progress. Meanwhile, I had to fend for myself, both emotionally and financially. I eventually earned a nursing degree, while Julia went to law school. By then, I had learnt not to seek my parents' approval. I moved out, obtained a job, and attempted to establish a life for myself. But the agony of those early years never left me. Julia and I remained in touch, but our connection was strained. She was always the successful, attractive sister, but I was just myself. Fast forward a few years, I met a beautiful man named Alex and we married. For the first time in my life, I felt truly appreciated and cherished. Alex was aware of my family dynamics and was really helpful. He helped me realize my own worth beyond the shadows cast by my parents and sister. We purchased a home, and I began to feel like I could finally leave the past behind. But Julia returned to my life in an unexpected way. She had completed law school and was working for a respected firm. She became engaged to a man who seemed perfect in every aspect. Our parents were ecstatic and couldn't stop talking about the forthcoming wedding. I tried to be pleased for her, but old feelings of inadequacy and hatred came back. Julia asked me to be her maid of honor. I was taken aback. We weren't friends, and I questioned why she would want me in such an important capacity, but she insisted on rebuilding our connection. I reluctantly consented, believing that this would be an opportunity to repair old hurts. The wedding preparations were a nightmare. Julia was a bridezilla, demanding and domineering. Every choice had to go via her, and she frequently rejected my thoughts and proposals. It was evident that she had not changed much. She still desired to be the center of attention. But I gritted my teeth and went along with it, hoping to support her and even gain some of her favor. Next came the bridal shower. It was a spectacular event hosted by our parents and attended by Julia's numerous friends and colleagues. I felt out of place and uncomfortable, but I kept a brave face. During the event, our mother delivered a speech praising Julia to the skies. She stated how proud they were of her accomplishments and how attractive she appeared. I stood there, feeling invisible yet again. But then something unexpected occurred. Julia seized the microphone and began speaking. She thanked everyone for attending, then turned to face me. Her response was, "I want to take a moment to acknowledge my sister, who has always been there for me. I know I haven't always shown it, but I appreciate everything she's done. She's strong, kind, and an amazing person. I'm lucky to have her as my sister." I was stunned. Julia has never publicly recognized me like this before. Tears welled up in my eyes, and for a little minute, I believed our relationship could alter. Perhaps this was a tipping point. However, the goodwill was short-lived. Julia called me in a panic about a week before her wedding. She had misplaced the family heirloom necklace that our grandmother had given us, and she was scheduled to wear it on her wedding day. She was hysterical, and I dashed over to assist her in finding it. We flipped her place upside down and still couldn't find it. 2 days later, Julia called me again, accusing me of stealing the necklace. She claimed I must have taken it out of jealousy. I was astonished and hurt. All I had done was attempt to help her, and now she was accusing me of stealing. Of course, our parents believed her, as they usually did with Julia. I was devastated. Eventually, Julia discovered the necklace in a drawer she had forgotten about, but the damage had already occurred. She never apologized for accusing me, and neither did our parents. The wedding went on, but I felt like an outsider in my own family. After the wedding catastrophe, Alex and I chose to concentrate on our respective lives and families. Alex, who had always been technologically inclined, began researching ways to make money online. Initially, it was a side venture, but he quickly discovered a great formula and began earning thousands of dollars. Within a year, his web projects were bringing in tens of thousands, and our financial situation had much improved. With our newly acquired fortune, we purchased a stunning mansion in a famous area. Alex surprised me with a Bugatti as a symbol of our success, and we soon had 2 beautiful children. Life was great, or so it appeared. However, my parents remained unconcerned about our accomplishments. Despite Julia's recent marital issues, they paid her periodic visits and were more engaged in her life. Julia had been living on her own since her marriage ended and was struggling with her work. She had been laid off from a top legal firm and was struggling to make ends meet. Her jealousy grew worse when she saw our success. She came over one day, claiming to want to reconnect and spend time with her nieces and nephew. Initially, I believed her. I assumed she was sincerely attempting to restore our shattered relationship. However, it did not take long to learn her genuine objectives. She started dropping up unannounced, often when Alex was home alone. She would dress provocatively and make subtle, flirty comments to him. Alex, being the faithful spouse he is, quickly informed me of her behavior. We were both stunned and outraged by her conduct. Rather than address her immediately, we devised a strategy to reveal her true colors. We installed hidden cameras in the living room and other public locations to catch her in the act. It wasn't long until we obtained the evidence we required. Julia made her move one day while I was supposed to be out running errands. She approached Alex, placed her hand on his arm, and whispered provocative things into his ear. "Come on, Alex," she said. "You deserve someone who truly appreciates you. Someone like me." Alex played along just long enough to keep her talking. "Julia, you need to stop. I love my wife, and this is incredibly inappropriate." But Julia persisted, leaning closer. "She doesn't have to know. It'll be our little secret." That was the moment we'd been waiting for. Alex forcibly pushed her away, saying, "Julia, I'm serious. You need to leave. This is wrong on so many levels." We documented the entire event on camera. With the proof in hand, we decided to take action. First, we convened a family meeting, which included Julia's husband, who had been unaware of her activities. When everyone had gathered, we showed the video. The room was silent as the video aired. Julia's husband's face became red with rage, and my parents were completely astonished. The video concluded with a tense silence before Julia's husband stood up. "Julia, how could you? After everything, you try to seduce your own sister's husband?" His voice was full of surprise and hurt. Julia stammered, attempting to come up with an excuse, but there was no disputing what we had witnessed. Our parents looked at her, disappointed and disgusted. "Julia, we trusted you. We always believed you were the better daughter, but this is beyond forgiveness," my mother replied, her voice cracking. My dad shook his head. "You've brought shame to our family. I don't even know who you are anymore." Julia's husband promptly filed for divorce. He left that same day, accompanied by their 2 children. My parents, who had always elevated Julia to a pedestal, were forced to confront the truth of her behavior. They moved away from her, unable to look at her in the same manner again. Julia's world came crashing down. She has lost her husband, her children, and the support of our parents. She tried to reach out to me, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive her that readily. The scars were too fresh, and the treachery was too severe. Alex and I continued to construct our lives together, stronger than ever. Julia's betrayal, however terrible, had eventually brought us together. We knew we could handle anything as long as we had each other. Life went on, but the scars from the past remained. My parents, who had always preferred Julia, struggled to accept her conduct. They visited less frequently, and when they did, it was evident that they were still dealing with their disappointment. They attempted to appear normal, but the strain was evident. Julia, on the other hand, was attempting to gather up the pieces of her broken existence. She had lost her work and was struggling financially. Her attempts to reconnect with her husband had been unsuccessful, and he had filed for full custody of their children. She was alone and desperate. One day, she appeared at our door, looking more ragged and broken than I had ever seen her. She pleaded with me to let her in so she could explain. Despite my better judgment, I agreed. She sat at our kitchen table, tears flowing down her cheeks, admitting everything. "I'm so sorry," she wailed. "I've been jealous of you for so long. I saw how happy you were, how successful, and I couldn't stand it. I thought if I could take Alex away, I'd feel better. But I was wrong. I've lost everything." Her words struck me hard. For so long, I had regarded Julia as the favored one, the one who had everything. I never realized how deep her insecurities went. I felt sympathy and hatred, but mostly I was tired. Tired of the drama, the suffering, and the never-ending cycle of rivalry and animosity. "I don't know what to say, Julia," I said. "You've hurt me in ways I can't even begin to describe. But I can't keep living with this anger. It's poisoning me, and it's poisoning our family." Julia nodded, tears still running down her cheeks. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am." We sat quietly for a while, the weight of our common history hanging thick in the air. Julia eventually went, leaving me to my own thoughts. Could I ever really forgive her? Could we ever get past this? In the weeks that followed, I concentrated on my family and my personal recovery. Alex was a rock for me every step of the process. We discussed Julia, the past, and what the future might hold. I slowly began to let go of some of my anger and bitterness. I recognized that holding on to it was not benefiting anyone, least of all myself. Julia continued to struggle, but she started to make changes. She began going to therapy, getting a job, and rebuilding her relationship with her kids. It wasn't easy, and there were failures along the road, but she was making an effort, which was something. My parents remained distant. The golden child had fallen, and they had no idea how to deal with it. They continued to see Julia on occasion, but it was evident that nothing would ever be the same. They came to see us less and less, and when they did, the tension was evident. It seemed as if they didn't know how to interact to me without the usual dynamic of favoritism. One sunny afternoon, as I watched my children play in our lovely garden, I realized something profound. Despite everything, I was content. I had a nice husband, wonderful children, and a life I was pleased with. Julia's acts had been painful, but they had also brought me to a place of strength and resilience. In the end, life continued. The scars of the past would never be completely healed, but they did not have to define the future. Julia and I started to restore our connection gradually and cautiously. It wasn't perfect and never will be, but it was a start. For the time being, I've decided to focus on the now and the future. The past had its purpose, but it no longer kept me captive. Alex and I continued to create a life together full of love, laughter, and the occasional struggle. Our beautiful home exceeded all of our expectations. The mansion was huge, beautiful, and ideal for raising a family. The children enjoyed their new rooms and the wide backyard where they could play. Alex and I were happier than ever, and for a while, it appeared that we had put the turmoil behind. Part 3. An unexpected turn. Life seems to have settled into a peaceful rhythm. Julia and I worked hard on our relationship, and it gradually began to improve. She apologized sincerely, and I noticed a true improvement in her behavior. We began meeting for coffee, discussing our lives, and even planned family outings together. It was a relief to finally feel like I had a sister I could count on. Meanwhile, Alex's career soared. He accepted an early retirement option from his software employer, which came with a large compensation. We were now financially secure beyond our wildest expectations, and Alex was excited to spend more time with the family and work on personal projects. However, the peace we had worked so hard for was quickly broken. My mother, who had always preferred Julia, appeared reluctant to accept the changes in our family dynamic. She couldn't get the suspicion that I had set Julia up with the video evidence. The thought persisted in her head, and she became increasingly aloof and hostile. One morning, while I was preparing breakfast, the cops appeared at our door with a search warrant. They discovered other items in our garage that I had never seen before, including pieces from a stolen car that had been reported missing months before. I was stunned as they handcuffed me and hauled me into custody. I kept thinking that it was a terrible mistake. Alex, who was on a business trip, rushed home as soon as he received the news. He quickly engaged one of the top criminal defense attorneys in the country, Rachel Hargrove, a talented but pricey barrister. Rachel assured us that she would get to the bottom of things and clear my name. The court date arrived soon. Rachel worked tirelessly in the days leading up to the trial, going over every detail and questioning everybody who may provide information. During our investigations, we discovered the awful truth. My own mother had planned the entire plot. Apparently, my mother had underworld friends who helped her obtain the stolen car parts. She had planted them in our garage, attempting to tarnish my reputation and, in her warped manner, teach me a lesson, for what she saw as my betrayal of Julia. She refused to recognize that her golden child was at fault, instead believing that I was the manipulator. The trial was tough. The prosecution presented their case, convinced that they had sufficient evidence to convict me. But Rachel was prepared. She provided irrefutable evidence that the car parts had been installed in our garage without our knowledge. She also called a witness, one of my mother's accomplices, who claimed that my mother had coordinated the entire operation. It barely took the jury 2 hours to deliberate. They judged me not guilty of all accusations. I was free, but the ordeal had left a lasting scar. My mother, however, was not so fortunate. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in jail for fraud and conspiracy. The judge made it clear that her conduct were both illegal and morally abhorrent. The courtroom became hushed as the verdict was read. My mother's expression was one of shock and rage. She never expected her scheme would fail so spectacularly. As they dragged her away, she gave me a hateful look. It was a sad moment, but I knew justice had been done. Following the trial, our family was left to pick up the pieces. Julia was horrified by our mother's behavior and suffered from emotions of guilt and humiliation. She relied on me for support, and for the first time, I felt like the elder sister, the protector. Alex and I took some time to recover from our tragedy. We spent more time with our children, making positive memories and ensuring they felt safe and loved. Our bond grew deeper, and we recognized that no matter what obstacles we faced, we'd always have each other. Julia, determined to atone for our mother's sins, worked tirelessly to reconstruct her life. She acquired a new job and began dating again. She stayed close to us, enjoying the family support she had previously taken for granted. My father struggled to accept my mother's infidelity. He had always been more passive, matching her powerful demeanor. But this occurrence shocked him to the core. He paid her a visit in prison, but their connection remained difficult and distant. Life ultimately discovered a new normal. Our family gatherings were tiny, but they were full of true love and connection. We honestly discussed the past, our faults, and the lessons we'd learned. It wasn't flawless, but it was authentic, which was enough. Through it all, Alex was my rock. His constant encouragement and affection kept me going, even on the worst days. His early retirement allowed Dad to spend more time with us, and he launched a new business that matched his technical knowledge with his desire to serve others. We shifted our focus to the future, instilling new traditions and ensuring our children grew up in a loving and supportive atmosphere. The past would continue to be a part of our tale, but it no longer defined us. 5 years had gone since the traumatic circumstances that led to my mother's imprisonment. Throughout those years, our lives gradually returned to a state of normalcy. Alex and I continued to prosper, our children grew up happy and loved, and Julia became a vital part of our family, having entirely repaired our previously shattered connection. Despite the anguish of the past, we were able to construct a tranquil and pleasant existence. Our family gatherings, while smaller, were filled with laughter and genuine connection. We frequently reminisced on the past, appreciating the lessons learned and the strength we found in one another. However, the serenity we had established was shattered once more when my mother was freed from prison. She had served her sentence, but her bitterness and animosity had not subsided. She was a different woman now, elderly and virtually blind, but her hatred for me had grown even deeper. Unbeknownst to us, my mother was scheming her retribution. She believed I had destroyed her life and wanted to hold me accountable. One fateful day, she took a shotgun from a nearby farm and started out to get me. Her objective was to catch me off surprise and take my life. I had no notion how dangerous the situation was. It was a bright afternoon, and I had taken the kids to the park. Alex was out running errands, while Julia was at work. I was sitting on a bench, watching my children play, when I suddenly felt a searing pain. I turned to see my mother standing a few feet away, her shotgun pointed directly at me. Her expression was a mix of wrath and determination. She screamed something incoherent and fired several bullets in rapid succession. Despite her fading eyesight and weak hands, 2 rounds reached their target. One impacted me in the buttocks, while the other damaged my right leg. The pain was intense, and I collapsed to the floor, unable to move. Bystanders phoned the police after they heard gunfire. When my mother saw the commotion and realized her plan had failed, she attempted to run but was swiftly captured by authorities. She was detained and eventually charged with attempted murder, which resulted in a 10-year prison sentence. I was brought to the hospital and had surgery to remove the bullets and fix the damage. The doctors told Alex and Julia that I would recover completely, but the physical and emotional scars would take a long time to heal. Throughout my 3-week hospital stay, Alex never left my side. He was my rock, offering constant support and strength. Julia came every day, bringing me my favorite delicacies and lifting my spirits with her stories and laughs. Their devotion and dedication were the pillars that helped me get through the hardest times. During those long, peaceful hours in the hospital, I had plenty of time to think about all that had transpired. My mother's actions left me feeling shocked and betrayed, which was significant. I couldn't comprehend how she let her anger for me consume her to the point that she attempted to kill me. Despite the anguish and bewilderment, there was a strong sense of appreciation. I was alive, and I had a loving family who supported me through thick and thin. Writing this piece is my way of absorbing what has transpired. It's a chance for me to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped me along the path, who has offered encouraging words when I needed them the most. Your support has meant everything to me. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tight during my mother's trial. The prosecution provided information about her crime, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. My mother sat there, a shell of her former self, but the rage and bitterness in her eyes were clear. She displayed no sorrow, only icy determination, which exacerbated the already awful situation. The jury did not take long to deliberate. Given the clear evidence of her deliberate actions, they convicted her of attempted murder. The judge sentenced her to life in prison, highlighting the gravity of her conduct and the breach of trust in our family. As she was carried away, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. This was my mother, the woman who once looked after me, now damned by her own hatred and actions. Life after the trial was a lengthy process of recovery. The physical wounds began to heal, but the emotional scars were deeper. Alex was great throughout it all, his constant support and love providing me the strength I required. He balanced his work and caring for the children, ensuring that they understood what had happened in a way that preserved their innocence. Julia was similarly amazing. Despite her own troubled connection with our mother, she supported me and offered comfort and understanding. She had really changed, and our friendship was stronger than ever. We relied on one another, finding solace in our common experiences and hope for a brighter future. During my recovery, Alex and I had many long chats about our lives and our goals for the future. We chose to focus on providing a stable, loving atmosphere for our children, making them feel safe and valued. Our house became a haven for laughter, love, and the warmth of family. The community's support was overwhelming. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers sent warm words and gestures. It reminded me of people's goodness and helped me restore my trust in humanity. I received numerous comments from people who had followed our tale, expressing their encouragement and sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity. 3 weeks after the incident, I felt strong enough to compose this post. It's a chance for me to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped me along the path, who has offered encouraging words when I needed them the most. Your support has meant everything to me. Most of all, I'd like to thank my husband, Alex, and my sister Julia. Alex, you've been my rock, my strength, and my greatest love. Your constant support and love have helped me get through the toughest moments. Julia, you've taught me what true forgiveness and redemption look like. Our bond has never been stronger, and I am grateful every day for the sister you have become. Life is unexpected, and the future is constantly unknown. But with the love and support of those that matter most, I'm confident I can tackle whatever comes my way. Thank you for taking part in my adventure. As I look ahead, I am filled with hope. My mother's acts, however painful, did not break me. They have helped me become stronger and more resilient. I am resolved to live a life filled with love, kindness, and compassion, and to instill in my children the value of forgiveness and family. I caught my fiancé with my sister while pregnant, and tomorrow I'm exposing everything at our family gathering. I have reached the edge of what I can bear. I am 28, and have been with my fiancé for just over 3 years. We live together with my 4-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. 3 weeks ago, I found out I am pregnant again. At first, I was overjoyed, naive enough to think we were finally creating the stable family I had always wanted. He grew distant the very next day. He ignored my excitement, started coming home late, and kept his phone glued to him at all times. I began noticing strange calls and those discreet social media notifications that vanished too quickly. My gut told me to investigate. I almost wish I had not. He has been secretly hooking up with my older sister behind my back. She was the one I always tolerated even though she drags drama wherever she goes. She would hug me when relatives were around, pretend to be the supportive older sibling, then turn around and badmouth me to her friends. I never imagined she would crawl into my life this deeply. It felt like a slap in the face to read their messages calling me clueless for not noticing. He told her about the pregnancy before he was honest with me about his doubts, and they joked about how stressed I would be raising another child. My sister bragged that our entire family thinks she is the more interesting and more popular sibling. Meanwhile, I am just the quiet one who apparently deserves this. I do not know if they are still meeting in secret or if they just get a kick out of hurting me. My fiancé denies everything whenever I confront him, says I am hormonal, that my imagination is running wild. My sister keeps messaging me, telling me I should keep my mouth shut and stop being dramatic. I am done hiding my anger. My mother wants me to talk it out calmly, but how do I fix something so broken I can barely breathe? My fiancé thinks I will just accept this. He is counting on me being too shy or too pregnant to do anything. Tomorrow, I plan to blow this up in front of the entire family. We are supposed to have a casual get-together at our parents' house, ironically to celebrate my pregnancy announcement. I will gather my phone logs, the screenshots, and all those humiliating texts they sent each other. Once all the relatives have settled in, I will put everything on display. No more secrets. I might burn everything in the process. I might lose any chance of a pleasant co-parenting scenario. But I feel like I have no other way to reclaim my dignity. I have been crying nonstop for days, my nerves are shot, and all I get from my fiancé is either silent treatment or insults. My sister taunts me and acts like I am worthless. I see no reason to protect them anymore. I do not know what happens next. Maybe they will run off together. Maybe they will lie or twist things around to make me look insane. My fiancé has not contributed much financially, so I worry about affording my daughter and this potential new baby on my own. Yet I cannot pretend everything is normal. I have to protect whatever self-respect I have left. I am going to set my entire world on fire tomorrow. Part of me feels terrified, the other part is numb. Regardless, I am done letting them tiptoe around my heart. If they want my silence, they should have kept their betrayal better hidden. Let everyone see exactly who they are. That is all I have left. Update: I am still reeling from what happened. After writing my last post, I spent hours debating with myself about whether I should really go through with exposing them at our family gathering. A part of me was scared I would turn my whole life upside down forever. But I knew I couldn't keep letting them walk all over me while pretending everything was fine. I called my mom beforehand to let her know I was breaking up with him and to prepare her. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there, including my ex-fiancé and my sister. My mother tried to pull me aside, whispering that we should talk first. I stayed calm, walked straight into the living room where everyone was sitting, and asked them to listen. They looked confused. My sister immediately rolled her eyes, and my fiancé mumbled something, probably hoping I would stay silent. I started reading the most shocking parts of the messages I found between the two of them. They mocked me, joked about me not noticing anything, and said I deserved this. I had timestamps proving he was sneaking around with my own sister while I was at home with my daughter. My sister stood up and accused me of lying, her voice defensive and low-pitched. But I just kept reading. The messages spoke for themselves. I revealed how he told her about my pregnancy before even discussing it with me and how they laughed about me being stressed raising another child. My fiancé tried to dismiss me, claiming I was overreacting and misinterpreting the situation because of my emotional pregnant state. He even blamed my mental health. By then, he stormed out of the room, and my sister started crying. My dad stared at the floor, silent, while my mother looked horrified. Finally, my sister snapped and stormed out, yelling that I was a dramatic liar who blew everything out of proportion. Now the fallout begins. My fiancé, or rather, my ex-fiancé, has been texting me non-stop. One moment, he says he is sorry. The next, he blames me for humiliating him. He shows zero genuine remorse. He is just mad that I exposed him. My sister calls me horrendous names, says I ruined her image, and refuses to take responsibility. She insists I am making up drama. Honestly, I do not even know if they are still seeing each other or blaming each other for being caught. Either way, their secret is out, and that is all I wanted. I am now talking to a lawyer because this man barely contributed financially before. I have to protect my daughter and ensure I never have a child with him. Only the thought of raising 2 kids alone is terrifying. I feel numb and heartbroken at times, but I also feel a strange sense of relief. At least everyone knows the truth now. I exposed everything that day in the living room, but at least I am no longer being trampled on in silence. My sister and ex-fiancé can no longer laugh behind my back. Yes, things will probably get messy. They might lie to other relatives, people we mutually know, or twist the story. But I am glad I refused to keep quiet. All I can do now is focus on the positive, talk to my lawyer, and move forward. It will be painful, but I will do everything in my power to build a new future on my own terms, far away from these people. My parents refused to help fund my college, but now they want me to pay for my sister's lavish wedding. Am I the asshole for causing family drama by refusing? I, 34 million, am a software developer, and I earn much more than the rest of my family. My mother is a retired music teacher, and my father manages the neighborhood hardware shop. I also have a younger sister, Catherine, 30, who I haven't spoken to in 5 years. This is primarily because she is a bad person, spoiled and entitled. She's been that way since childhood, and my parents did nothing to dissuade or prevent her from becoming so. I endured her conduct for a long time, until 5 years ago, when she invited her new partner to Christmas dinner. I was hosting that year since I had recently moved into a new apartment and wanted to do something special. Catherine, as usual, wrecked the entire celebration by making superfluous remarks about my house's small size and age. She claimed it wasn't even in a good neighborhood and kept bragging about her new partner, who happened to be wealthy and lived on a large estate more than 10 times the size of my apartment. I could not handle it anymore. I reminded her that, unlike her boyfriend, I had moved into my apartment and was paying all of the rent on my own, without assistance from my parents. Something neither she nor her boyfriend could say for themselves. I also told her that if she had such high standards, she might escort herself out of my house and never return. Unsurprisingly, she and her partner were offended because everything was true, and they fled. Since then, we haven't communicated. My parents have made numerous attempts to reconcile us, but I refuse to see her. The only reason I had a relationship with her before was because of my parents, but I couldn't take it any longer. It's been 5 years since our last conversation, and I recently discovered she's engaged to the same boyfriend she was dating back then. They're getting married in a few months. My folks, like fools, insisted on paying for the wedding site and decor so that they wouldn't be surpassed by the groom's parents. I think this was a very stupid move on their side. First, they should have recognized Catherine has costly taste, and her plans would be much out of their price range. Second, they couldn't outdo the groom's parents, who are significantly more financially secure. I'm not sure what they were thinking, but they had already committed, and the wedding is only a few months away. With my sister's lavish preparations, my parents immediately realized they couldn't afford everything and asked me for a loan a few days ago. Despite having a positive relationship with my parents for several years, I had to decline. This choice is based on an event that occurred several years ago. I'm on Reddit now because I'm questioning if I did the correct thing. Many of my family accuse me of being petty, but I disagree. When I was going to graduate from high school and enter college, my parents informed me that they wouldn't support my college tuition or any other fees. They explained that once I had turned 18, I was on my own. I was surprised by this because my parents had always been quite supportive of me, so this seemed out of character for them. They went on to explain that, back in their day, they had to fend for themselves after turning 18 because their parents were not wealthy enough to fund their costs. They believed that this experience had strengthened their resilience and independence, and they encouraged me to follow suit. They had not even set aside any money for my sister and me, insisting that we work our way through college, just as they had. My subject was not simple, and I didn't want to waste time working while attending college. I wasn't sure I'd be able to retain my grades while balancing both commitments. Furthermore, college is expensive, and no amount of part-time job will cover the expenses. I suggested getting a student loan, but my parents were against it. Even when I proposed borrowing money from relatives and repaying it later, they found it offensive that I would even suggest such a thing. They informed me that borrowing money was against their morals, calling it pathetic. I recall having a lot of disagreements with them on this topic in particular. Finally, I was able to persuade my grandparents to assist me in obtaining a student loan, which allowed me to complete my college education. I was really angry with my parents at the time because of their stance, but I finally forgiven them. However, this does not imply that I forgot about it totally. My sister never experienced this difficulty because she never attended college. She didn't think she needed to worry with it because she knew she'd either inherit dad's business or marry. That is exactly what she is doing right now, so congratulations to her for adhering to her plan. The basic line is that I recall what my parents said about borrowing money. When I recommended taking out a loan to pay my college tuition, they flatly refused, citing their morals. Borrowing money, according to those ideas, should still be avoided. When it came to my education funding, they just worried about their principles. However, now that Catherine wishes to marry and have a lavish wedding, they appear to have conveniently forgotten all of it. I thought that was quite hypocritical of them, and I wasn't going to let it slip. They created a lot of inconvenience for me back then, and I honestly don't believe my sister's wedding is more important than my college education. If I hadn't completed my degree and received the grades I got, I wouldn't have the job I do now or be able to aid them financially. When they asked me for assistance, I reminded them of what they had told me about loans and borrowing money, how it violated their beliefs, and all of the other explanations they had given back then. They appeared surprised since I don't think they expected me to remember anything after so many years, but I did. And I recalled everything quite well. After I finished speaking, they had nothing to say and returned home peacefully. I thought that was the end of it, but then a slew of relatives started calling me, informing me that the way I handled my parents was incredibly humiliating for them, and they were furious about it. My parents had evidently been telling everyone that I had changed after receiving so much money and were now hanging it over their heads, attempting to bring them down despite everything they had done for me. I didn't think this accurately represented what I'd done. I had merely fought against what I considered unfair, and that was it. As a result, I stopped speaking to my parents. If they honestly disagreed with what I said, they should have approached me directly rather than going behind my back and complaining to the rest of the family. I also chose not to talk with the rest of the family since, if they didn't understand where I was coming from, I had nothing else to say to them. I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding, so I didn't feel obligated to contribute in any way at all. I haven't spoken to my parents or anyone else in the family in the past few days. I've been fairly pleased about it because I don't believe I did anything wrong. However, 2 days ago, my parents paid me another visit, and this time they were really upset. They informed me that they had been denied entry to my sister's wedding, presumably due to my presence. I don't see how I could have caused such an incident, especially because I haven't communicated with Catherine in any way. According to my parents, When they told Catherine they couldn't afford the wedding and wanted her and her in-laws to help cover the expenditures of things they couldn't afford, she went insane. Catherine began pressuring my parents to arrange the money in some way because, at this point, going to her in-laws and asking for financial assistance would make her family appear very awful, which she did not want. She was somewhat correct in that if my parents were unsure whether they could cover the total cost of what they had promised, they should not have committed to it in the first place. She's generally spoiled and entitled, but I don't think she was wrong when she said this. Personally, I believe she and her fiancé should have paid the entire expense themselves because his family is wealthy enough to do so. However, if my parents had committed to something, they should follow through, and Catherine was correct in saying that they made her seem awful in front of her in-laws. So, I believe she had every right to stress out. I told my parents, emphasizing that I was not involved. I did not urge them to commit to something like this. They brought it on themselves and had only themselves to blame. At this point, I believe my sister's decision to cancel their invitation to the wedding was an overreaction. But then again, what did they expect of Catherine? She has always been this way and they, not I, are to blame. However, my parents were not prepared to hear any of this. They said that if I had just helped them out and lent them some money instead of being petty and harboring old grudges, they would not be in this situation right now. I thought it was really unfair of them to blame me, so I told them to go, which they did. But they persisted, and now the entire family has turned against me, accusing me of being self-centered and cold-hearted. Personally, I do not believe I have done anything wrong. But, anyhow, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding because my parents cannot afford it. Update 1. Hello. So I have decided to avoid touch with my complete family. Aside from my grandparents, both my father's and mother's sides of the family are currently unified against me, which is insane. Obviously, my mother's parents are no longer alive, but my father's folks support me. So far, they've been trying to keep the peace in the family, but even they're tired of the drama. Everyone in the family has had disagreements in the past, but I believe their hatred for me has brought them together. At the very least, I am delighted I was able to help the family. But I've blocked them all, and I don't want any trouble right now. Someone in the comments remarked that the true reason they all seem to despise me so much, why they need a reason to oppose me, is probably because they are jealous. That, I believe, is a legitimate point. I don't want to brag, but I'm doing much better than the majority of my family members, and I don't think they can take it. Growing up, I never really took anyone's counsel. Most of them advised me to pursue a business degree and take over my father's store because that's where the future is, rather than spending so much time on the internet. And guess what? That is how I make a living now. Not only am I far more accomplished than most of my cousins, but their parents appear to resent me. It just doesn't make sense to me because I believe families should celebrate and share each other's triumphs. But this has never been the case. It makes me sad at times, but I can't help it. Some folks are exactly like this. I'll bet my folks are already loving the fact that everyone is against me right now. They claim it was my fault that they were not invited to my sister's wedding. We haven't spoken since they last stopped by to accuse me of damaging their relationship with my sister, which I still don't understand. However, my grandparents have informed me that they are not speaking with my parents either. Since my grandparents are on my side, it demonstrates how ungrateful my parents are. My grandparents had helped them numerous times in the past, but they don't seem to remember any of it. That makes me glad because I didn't help them when they came to me. I believe they would have conveniently forgotten about it in the future. They take everything for granted, and it's past time someone teach them a lesson, even if it had to be someone as terrible as Catherine. Update 2. Hi. A truly interesting thing happened yesterday. I couldn't share it here earlier since I was so busy, but Catherine came to see me after I returned home from work. She arrived at my place about an hour later, which shocked me because, as I recall, we had not communicated in the previous 5 years. We do not have a nice relationship. I was very convinced she was here to talk about her wedding with me since, now that our parents aren't even invited, I assumed she needed money. However, she was wise enough not to begin with that. Instead, she informed me that she came here to apologize for what she had done in the past. She stated that she was about to begin a new chapter in her life, she was getting married, and that she wanted to formally invite me before anybody else as a way to make up for her previous behavior. She said she regretted being a brat, but it wasn't totally her fault because our parents never reprimanded her conduct. As a result, she grew up believing that her behaviors were socially acceptable. Now that she is older, she understands she was a terrible person and is attempting to make up to everyone she has mistreated in the past. She believed there was no better place to begin than with me, because as her brother, I had to put up with her the most. I let her speak, and after she concluded her brief statement, I told her I was fine with it and relieved she had finally come to her senses and apologized. However, I knew there was more to come and waited patiently. Of course, she finally began to tell me that she knew our parents had been cruel to me as well. She claimed she had heard from other relatives that our parents had been calling me selfish, callous, and petty because I refused to contribute to her wedding. She tried to trick me by telling me that I was entirely correct in my viewpoint because, at the end of the day, our parents had never assisted me after the age of 18. She said that they were the ones who had pledged to assist her pay for the wedding. As a result, it wasn't my obligation to bail them out when they got into trouble, especially because we didn't have a nice relationship in the beginning. I could sense she was working up to something, so I waited for her to arrive. After I hadn't said anything for a while, she suddenly acknowledged that, now that our parents weren't invited, they had withdrawn the money they had promised her for so long. She began yelling about how unjust that was, pointing out that they were the ones who had agreed to cover at least some of the expenses. She was too embarrassed to tell her fiancé that, following her argument with our parents, they would no longer be providing anything. This meant that his parents would have to pay for everything. Finally, she explained why she came to meet me. She begged if I would be willing to assist her only once, pledging that she would be grateful to me for the rest of her days. She even offered to sign a contract or do whatever it took to convince me that she would return the money, ideally by the end of the year. She simply wanted my assistance right now to spare herself the shame of having to inform her fiancé of the predicament. I found it fascinating that she was willing to commit to repay the money and even go through the process to make it official. However, I informed her that I needed time to think about it. Ultimately, despite her apology, we were still not on good terms, and our friendship was strained. I assumed she'd understand, but she turned out to be quite shameless. She said I was being too pricey, and that she wasn't asking for as much as her sister. That was generous of her, given that we hadn't had a connection in almost 5 years, let alone one approximating siblings. I had realized from the start that she was only coming to ask for money. Her apology was not sincere. I informed her that she was exactly like our parents, greedy and constantly looking out for herself. Of course, this infuriated her. She began shrieking at me, but I am not my parents, and I had no reason to tolerate her behavior. I quickly told her to leave my house because I would not tolerate it. She originally refused to leave, but I grabbed her arm and forced her to. She kept shrieking that she was going to call the cops on me for attacking her, but I didn't mind. Eventually, she departed. I was really upset about it for a long, but now it just seems like a ridiculously amusing thing, and I'm not going to let it worry me. Update 3. It's been a few weeks since my last update. I assumed that because my sister and I were still bickering, the invitation she issued to me had been cancelled. But today, I was pleasantly delighted to receive an invitation to her wedding. I didn't know how to make sense of it and felt strange about the whole affair, so I contacted her. She didn't react right away, but after a few hours, she called me back. When I thanked her for inviting me over the phone, she was really rude. I decided to ask her what was going on because I was perplexed. She informed me she meant her apologies that day and was sincerely striving to be a better person now. She had also arranged for the money alone, so she no longer required anyone's assistance. She wanted me to know that she wasn't just acting to get on my good side because I was wealthy, and she insisted on meaning what she said. She also added that our parents had made her understand how much of a brat she had been in the past. She was doing everything she could to avoid becoming one of them. At this time, I decided to ask her if she wanted to invite them to the wedding also. She assured me that, contrary to what they were saying, she had never uninvited anyone. She was only upset with them because they had put her in a tough situation. Apparently, my parents knew what my sister wanted for her wedding. She had informed them from the start that her ideas were somewhat ambitious, and she did not believe they would have enough money to cover everything. Despite this, they were overconfident about it. It would be awkward for her to reveal to her in-laws that her parents were only talking and couldn't afford what they had promised. The fact that they hadn't even thought things through and were so determined to compete with her in-laws disturbed her. Because she had been ranting at them, they decided she didn't want them at her wedding anymore and effectively uninvited themselves. They arrived at that conclusion on their own, despite the fact that she had not stated or hinted anything. Instead of addressing her and discussing it with her, they chose to tell everyone else their version of the tale. I have to acknowledge that it is quite problematic for them to go about telling people that their children are bad while refusing to openly address the issue with us when they had the opportunity. Of course, after they've said such terrible things about us to everyone else, we're not going to want to work things out with them. Even so, they'll find a reason to blame us. They are continuously trying to play the victim. I'm delighted my sister is finally starting to see this. Catherine informed me that the rest of the family has not alienated her in the same manner that they did with me. However, she is still pondering whether to invite them to the wedding, given that most of them appear to be solidly on our parents' side. They've been less harsh with her, attempting to explain why my parents were right, rather than directly blaming her. I believe this has something to do with the fact that my parents are too proud to apologize but not too proud to rely on their children in the future. Because my grandparents will no longer be able to assist them, they are most likely hoping to keep Catherine on their side by leaving that door open. That's just my theory, though. Whatever the case, it's evident they're treating Catherine differently than they did me. It's sad, but it's not unusual for me. At the very least, Catherine is beginning to see the reality. If she is truly trying to be a better person, I believe I am willing to give her a chance. After we spoke on the phone, she apologized for throwing a fit the other day and stated that she would be delighted to have me at her wedding. She believed that someone from the family should be present. I haven't decided whether I'll attend, but I'll wait a few days before responding. It's difficult to mend a connection that hasn't existed in 5 years, but I don't want to be the type of person who harbors grudges indefinitely. That type of thinking would only make me unhappy. I even discussed it with my grandparents, who said that if I decide to go, they will come as well. Previously, they weren't sure if they wanted to go, but given the circumstances, they believe that supporting Catherine is the proper thing to do. Update 4. I attended Catherine's wedding yesterday and led her down the aisle. Unfortunately, our parents did not apologize to her or reach out before the wedding, so they were not invited. She was really disturbed about this for several days before the wedding. She eventually reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to walk her down the aisle. She expressed a strong need for emotional support from others. I immediately agreed. Nobody deserves to be treated this way, especially by their own parents, for something so trivial. I thought it would be easy for my parents to emotionally cut me off because my sister had always been the golden child. But seeing this side of them, realizing they were too proud and egotistical to repair their relationship with the only child they cared about, was stunning. In some ways, they contributed to my sister's previous bad behavior. They never bothered to address her conduct, believing it was preferable to leave her be. It was their obligation as parents to guide her, but they did not care. While I don't believe it was totally their fault, they could have done something to prevent it, and didn't. Catherine asked me to walk her down the aisle, and I consented. She appeared really grateful, especially given that the few family members she had invited had declined. Everyone appears to want to support my parents and participate in the drama. I was able to persuade my grandparents to go, though. Catherine apologized to everyone in attendance before the ceremony. Her fiancé also apologized to me for his behavior several years ago. Catherine informed me that she had been open with her fiancé about the issue with our parents. He told her not to worry about the money and that he would take care of it. That's how they figured it out. However, she almost broke down before the wedding, upset that our parents would not be present. Her fiancé, our grandparents, and I persuaded her not to let them spoil her wonderful day. I wouldn't say everything is ideal right now, but we'll work on our relationship and attempt to improve things. I truly believe Catherine has evolved as a person. When I saw her yesterday, it felt like she was being completely honest about her desire to start anew. Some people may disagree with my decision to forgive her, but I believe I am doing the right thing. My sister discovered she wasn't Dad's daughter and left us for her biological father. Now, she has returned for Dad's inheritance. I never imagined I'd be writing something like this, but I really need to get everything off my chest and perhaps gain some outside perspective. This matter has been bothering me for years, and it has only gotten more convoluted. My sister Lisa's wedding 5 years ago devolved into a complete disaster that nearly ruined our family. It's still difficult to discuss at times, but I need to describe everything from the beginning so that it makes sense. I was 28 at the time, and Lisa was 25. We were always really close. Like abnormally close, according to most people who knew us. We were practically inseparable as children, despite the fact that I was 15 months older. I sort of took that connection for granted. We did almost everything together. We exchanged clothes, generally without asking, had the same pals, and were constantly in each other's business. Our mother used to say she couldn't bring just one of us somewhere because we were a buy one, get one free group. Thinking back on our adolescent years makes my heart hurt a little. We actually did everything together. For example, we might wake up at 2 a.m. on a school night, lying on my bed, eating forbidden food we'd hidden from Mom and discussing the most ridiculous topics. We even devised a strategy for covering one another's backs. If Lisa decided to attend to a party that our parents would absolutely not approve of, I'd pretend she was studying at my friend Sarah's place. When I wanted to meet up with a guy I was seeing, who, looking back, was a bit of a jerk, she'd tell mom and dad I was in the library. We were pretty excellent at being partners in crime, so we never got caught. The amount of time we spent arranging our future weddings was just insane. Lisa was preoccupied with having the perfect spring wedding. She desired cherry blossoms everywhere. She even wanted to marry in a cherry blossom orchard. She'd spend hours showing me photographs of beautiful Japanese gardens and discussing how she'd reproduce the entire feel. Meanwhile, I was determined to have a highly dramatic winter wedding with fake snow and icicle lights everywhere. We used to joke that we'd have to marry 6 months apart so we could both be maids of honor at the other's dream wedding. It's ridiculous to think about right now. If someone had told me how things would turn out back then, I doubt I would have believed them. When Lisa got engaged to her college love James, it seemed like everything was falling into place. James was exactly the type of guy we'd discussed during our late-night sister chats. Nice, witty, and utterly devoted to Lisa. I was ecstatic when she asked me to be her maid of honor, even though we both knew it wasn't really a question. We spent hours looking through wedding magazines, making Pinterest boards, and visiting venues. It was like we were small girls playing wedding again, only this time it was real. Our parents split when we were teenagers. I was 16 and Lisa was 15. Despite their breakup, they had managed to keep a polite relationship for our sake. Mom remarried a beautiful man named Steve 3 years after her divorce. He was kind and compassionate, constantly making us feel included in their new life together without attempting to replace our father. Dad elected to remain unmarried, focusing his energies on growing his real estate development business. He always maintained that his daughters were all he needed in terms of family. Lisa's parents had agreed to split the costs of her ideal wedding equally. Dad had done exceptionally well with his business over the years, and he insisted on ensuring Lisa had everything she wanted for her special day. "My little girl only gets married once," he would add, beaming with delight as we showed him the plans. The issue began 2 weeks before the wedding. Lisa and I were at Mom's place sorting through old family photos for the reception presentation. We wanted to include a lot of childhood photos, including Lisa and me in matching Easter outfits, family holidays to the beach, and Dad teaching us how to ride bikes. We were in the attic, surrounded by old boxes and memories, when Lisa discovered a stack of letters tied together with a fading blue ribbon. We initially assumed they were love letters from our parents' childhood. Lisa began reading one aloud, giggling, but her voice soon drifted off. Her face turned pale, and her hands shook. The letters were from Mom to a man named Michael and were written around the time Lisa was conceived. They described their affair and Michael's urgent request to be a part of the baby's life, which turned out to be Lisa. I will never forget Lisa's expression as she realized the truth. She'd always been very close to Dad. Lisa was Dad's little shadow as we grew up, whereas I was more independent. She followed him around his workshop, learning about the tools and assisting him with projects. She even chose to study business in college with the goal of eventually taking over his real estate company. The confrontation with Mom was explosive. Lisa rushed into the kitchen and demanded answers. Mom burst into tears after looking at the papers. Through her tears, she disclosed everything. Michael had been her coworker, and they had a brief affair at a difficult period in her marriage. When she discovered she was pregnant, she chose to remain with Dad and never notified anybody about Lisa's true paternity. She implored us to understand that she was young, afraid, and simply wanted to protect our family. Lisa was adamant about telling Dad the truth before their wedding. I attempted to persuade her to wait until after the wedding, concerned about how this might impact her big day. "How can I walk down the aisle with him, knowing I've been living a lie my entire life?" she was arguing. "How can I let him give a father of the bride speech when he's not even my real father?" I should have backed her decision more instead of attempting to protect everyone's feelings. She had the right to know the truth, and I was wrong to suggest hiding it, even briefly. The day we informed Dad altered everything. We went to his place together. Lisa requested I accompany her for support. Dad was in his workshop, excitedly working on a surprise wedding present for Lisa. We later discovered it was a handcrafted jewelry box. When Lisa showed him the letters, he slumped down heavily on his workbench, the half-finished box forgotten in his grasp. Dad's reply was simultaneously devastating and impressive. Despite his obvious anguish and astonishment, his first concern was for Lisa. "Sweetheart," he said. "I need you to know something. Biology doesn't make a father. Love does, and I have loved you every single day of your life. Nothing will ever change that." He offered to still walk her down the aisle if she wanted him to, but Lisa was too overwhelmed by everything. She postponed the wedding, stating that she needed time to process. That's when things started to fall apart. Lisa got preoccupied with locating Michael. She spent hours searching online for every lead she could find. When she finally found him on social media, he was surprised and excited to meet her. Unlike Dad, Michael had never married or had any other children. He accepted Lisa into his life with open arms, and what began as a simple curiosity quickly escalated into something more serious. Lisa began to spend more time with Michael, learning about her true origins and family history. She learned that they both loved photography and had similar mannerisms. Michael showed her old family albums and told her she looked like her grandma and smiled like her aunt. With each new connection she made with Michael's family, she seemed to drift more away from ours. This is where I committed what Lisa considers an unforgivable transgression. I couldn't bear watching Dad suffer as the daughter he had raised for 25 years faded away. One evening, after Lisa had canceled another meal with Dad to spend time with Michael, I confronted her. I reminded her of how many times Dad had been there for her. I pointed out that, while Michael was her biological father, he hadn't sat through every dance recital or looked for monsters under her bed. "You don't understand," Lisa responded. "You get to be sure about who you are. You're Dad's real daughter. I've been living a lie my whole life. Every time I look in the mirror now, I wonder what parts of me come from a stranger." Our relationship deteriorated quickly following that chat. She accused me of siding with her father and failing to support her desire to discover her true identity. Within months, she had relocated to California to be closer to Michael. What truly devastated us was Lisa's decision to hold a tiny wedding ceremony in California, with Michael leading her down the aisle. She did not invite Dad or me. We found out about it after a mutual acquaintance shared some Facebook images. Dad tried to keep a strong face, but I could tell he was devastated. He had already purchased her wedding gift, which included not just the jewelry box he had been crafting, but also a hefty down payment on a house. He never asked for the money back, instead simply transferring it to her account with a note expressing his hope she would be pleased. For the next few years, I attempted to maintain contact with Lisa via social media and occasional texts, but she remained distant and cold. Meanwhile, I became much closer to Dad. He was depressed after losing Lisa, so I made an effort to see him on a daily basis and incorporate him as much as possible in my life. We enjoyed Sunday dinners together, and I began to learn about the real estate industry from him, not because I wanted to take over, but because I knew it made him happy to share his knowledge with someone who cared. 2 years ago, Dad began to exhibit signals that something was wrong. He would miss appointments, become confused with ordinary activities, and occasionally get lost when traveling to known locations. Following numerous disturbing instances, I persuaded him to consult a doctor. The diagnosis was devastating: early-onset Alzheimer's disease. The doctor said that, while medication could halt the pace, we should begin planning for the future while Dad was still conscious. That's when Dad resolved to get his affairs in order. He gave me power of attorney and opted to give me the majority of his assets, including his home, business holdings, and most of his savings. I attempted to persuade him to divide things more equitably, saying that Lisa was still his daughter in all the important ways. But Dad was adamant. "I'm not doing this to punish Lisa," he stated. "I'm doing this because you've proven yourself capable of managing these responsibilities. The business, the properties, they need someone who understands them and cares about them. You've shown that you do." Lisa learned about Dad's will last month from a family member. Suddenly, my phone was continuously vibrating with texts and calls from her. She explained that she had done a lot of soul searching and recognized she had been unjust to both Dad and me. She stated that she missed having her sister in her life and wanted to make things right. But then Mom began pressuring me to persuade Dad to change his will while he still could. She claimed that she deserved an equal share of the fortune because he had raised her as his daughter, conveniently ignoring that she had rejected the same relationship for the previous 5 years. She even stated that Dad's Alzheimer's diagnosis would render him legally incapable to make these decisions, hinting that she could challenge the will if required. The final straw came last week, when Lisa showed up unexpectedly at my residence. She burst into tears, stating her marriage was failing and that moving to California had been a horrible mistake. Michael, she said, was not the parent she had imagined. He was controlling and began forcing her to care for him in his old age because she was his only child. She asked me to help her relocate back home, saying she wanted to reconnect with Dad before his condition deteriorated. When I asked her specifically if her sudden wish to reconcile was related to Dad's fortune, she became defensive and angry. She accused me of greed and attempting to keep Dad's money for myself. "You've always been his favorite," she said angrily. "Ever since I found out the truth, you've been poisoning him against me, making sure you get everything in the end." The talk ended with her storming out when I informed her she couldn't just come back into our life because it was financially convenient. Lisa is now telling everyone who will listen that I manipulated Dad into leaving her out of his will. She's even reached out to her mother, with whom she had previously been aloof, in an attempt to persuade her to support her. Mom, to her credit, has remained silent, claiming that when she lied about Lisa's paternity, she forfeited her right to an opinion on Dad's decisions. I am split about what to do. Dad's condition is slowly deteriorating. He sometimes forgets the year and refers to me as Lisa. I want his final years to be calm, and part of me wonders if I should try to persuade him to amend his will merely to keep the peace. Lisa is still my sister, and I hate that money has caused this schism between us. But another part of me believes she made her decision 5 years ago, when she rejected Dad and cut us out of her life. Lisa's desire to reconcile solely because there is an inheritance at risk appears manipulative and disingenuous. Update 1. Wow. Thank you to everyone who took the time to comment and share their opinions. Reading through your messages has definitely helped me process things I wasn't even aware I was battling with. Many of you have questions and recommendations, so I wanted to provide an update on what has been going on. First, regarding the inheritance situation. I followed some of your recommendations and had another lengthy conversation with Dad about fully cutting Lisa out. I chose one of his good days for our conversation. His doctor said that with early onset Alzheimer's, you have these periods where everything is crystal clear, almost like in the old days. I reminded him that while Lisa had truly hurt him by selecting Michael, entirely cutting her out might be something he regretted later if he had a moment of clarity. We ended up speaking for hours. Dad began relating all of his recollections of Lisa when she was younger, such as how she used to follow him about his workshop with a tiny plastic tool set, pretending to mend things alongside him. He got quite upset talking about it, which was difficult to witness because Dad is not the crying kind. It made him understand that his current decision may have been motivated by hurt rather than reasonable thought. So we scheduled a meeting with his lawyer, which cost an absolute lot. Dad decided to create a smaller trust fund just for Lisa's future children's schooling. It was actually rather brilliant how he structured it. The trust can only be used for educational expenses, such as tuition, books, and other charges. This money cannot be used to finance flashy automobiles or spring break getaways. Dad also included a stipulation requiring Lisa to maintain frequent touch with him, at least monthly visits or calls, for a full year before the trust becomes operational. His logic made sense to me. He explained that he is still providing for his possible grandchildren, who should not be punished for this adult drama, while also realizing that I was the one who stood by him through it all. Furthermore, the contact requirement prevents Lisa from simply showing up, taking the money, and leaving. She must make a genuine effort to repair their friendship. If I'm fully honest, I believe it's more than fair given everything that has happened. It's also made me realize that I've been harboring more anger about this whole issue than I imagined. My therapist thinks it's acceptable to feel betrayed by Lisa, but I should work on processing these sentiments in a healthy way rather than allowing them to gnaw at me. She's probably correct, but it's difficult when new drama is springing up every other day. Also, in case anyone is wondering, Dad's new prescription appears to be helping with his symptoms. He's been having more good days than bad recently, which is a tremendous comfort. I've been recording him sharing anecdotes about our youth on clear days. The physicians advised that it might aid both him and us later on as his condition worsened. It's bittersweet, but at least we're making the most of our time together. Update 2. Okay, so a lot has occurred since my last update, and I'm still trying to digest it. I've been sitting here for over an hour, trying to figure out how to even begin describing this disaster. I suppose I'll simply dive right in. Yesterday morning, I received an unexpected Facebook message from Lisa's biological father, Michael. At first, I considered deleting it without reading it, assuming it was simply more drama. But something compelled me to open it. Thank God I did, because what he revealed drastically transformed my perspective on the problem. Michael has been feeling bad about his involvement in all that has happened. He claimed he should have told us the truth months ago, but he was frightened of losing his connection with Lisa. Lisa had apparently been lying to everyone about her new life in California. Their father-daughter relationship isn't as fantastic as she makes it out to be. It's actually been extremely stressful over the past year. According to Michael, Lisa has been urging him to sell his house and participate in a business initiative she and James are interested in. When he declined, she began guilt-tripping him about how many years of parenting he owed her. He claims she has gotten increasingly manipulative, even attempting to persuade his sister to urge him to take out a second mortgage. The business venture turns out to be a rather dodgy multi-level marketing scheme that James fell into after leaving his job last year. But wait, things get worse. Michael also revealed that Lisa and James were having major marital issues. They appear to have been discreetly separated for the last 3 months. James moved out after they had a heated argument about money. They're literally drowning in debt because of this MLM bullshit. Lisa never informed any of us about this. She's been maintaining a picture-perfect image on social media while her life has been falling apart. I was still trying to digest everything when Lisa arrived at my place again this morning. This time, she had James with her. Yes, it appears that they are now working things out. They had prepared an entire presentation on Dad's estate and how unfair it was that I was receiving everything. Lisa kept saying that she had forgiven Dad for his rejection of her and was ready to be a proper daughter again. I let them speak for about 10 minutes until I had had enough. I got out my phone and began reading Michael's message aloud. You guys, I wish I had captured Lisa's expression. In seconds, she switched from pretending to be a kind, understanding daughter to panicking outright. James literally stood up and walked away in the midst of it. I believe he didn't realize Lisa had also been lying to Michael. Lisa was absolutely devastated after James departed. Her tears ultimately revealed the whole truth. Their ideal California life had been anything but flawless. James lost his work about a year ago and became associated with an MLM organization that sells health supplements. They spent their funds, maxed out their credit cards, and even took out personal loans to create their business. They now owe more than $100,000. Lisa claimed she had been attempting to acquire money from Michael for months, playing up the long-lost daughter story. When that didn't work, she figured she could persuade Dad to amend his will, and then coax me into giving her a larger percentage of the fortune. She explained that she was desperate and didn't know what else to do. To be honest, I felt sad for her, like my little sister was definitely in over her head and afraid. But another part of me was extremely enraged. She's been manipulating everyone the entire time, pitting us against one another while creating a fantasy story about her fantastic new life. The worst part is that she has been making Dad feel bad for abandoning her, despite the fact that she was the one who cut him out of her life. I informed Lisa that she needed to come clean to Dad. She began making excuses about his health, not wanting to upset him, but I quickly shut that off. I stated that either she tells him the truth or I will. She ultimately consented to speak with him, but only if I went with her. The conversation with Dad was intense. We caught him on a good day, thank God, and Lisa told him everything, about the debt, lying to Michael, James losing his job, and everything else. Dad was uncomfortably quiet after she finished talking. Then he did something that surprised both of us. He began laughing. He stated the entire thing reminded him of when Lisa was 7 and smashed his favorite coffee mug. Instead of simply telling him the truth, she spent a week fabricating a complex story about how the dog knocked it over, replete with a witness statement from her stuffed bear. Dad said he knew it was her the whole time but let her continue the story because he wanted to see how far she'd go. You've always been like this, Lizzie, he said. Creating complicated solutions to simple problems, just like your mother. He was not being harsh about it. Then he got serious and told her that while he understood her circumstances, lying and manipulating others was not the solution. For the first time in years, they were able to converse for hours. Dad agreed to help Lisa and James with their debt, but only if they moved back home, got real jobs, no more MLM, and went to financial counseling. He will pay off their debt, but they must sign an agreement to repay him with fair monthly payments. This money will come from his present assets rather than the inheritance. Regarding the inheritance, Dad is adhering to his original plan. The majority of the estate will still go to me, with an education trust for Lisa's future children, if any. But, honestly, after watching Lisa and Dad reconnect, I don't care about money anymore. Watching them begin to restore their connection is worth more than any inheritance. Lisa and James will begin their apartment quest tomorrow. They're looking into locations near Dad so Lisa can assist me with his care. She's already discussing how we can coordinate our schedules so that someone is always available for him. It's strange, a month ago, I'd have been skeptical of her unexpected helpfulness. But after everything that has happened, I feel she is being real this time. I understand we still have a long way to go. There is a great deal of trust to be rebuilt, and Lisa and James must work hard to get their lives back on track. But, for the first time in years, we feel like we might be able to be a genuine family again. Michael texted me this evening to see how things went. I told him the truth, and he appeared relieved that it was finally out. He stated that he still wants to be in a relationship with Lisa, but perhaps with healthier limits this time. I believe that is probably best for everyone. Someone commented on my previous post, stating that sometimes people have to reach rock bottom before they can begin climbing back up. Perhaps Lisa needed to lose everything to realize what was truly important. Dad used to say that the true test of a person is not whether or not they make mistakes, but how they deal with those mistakes when they do. I suppose we'll see if Lisa passes the test this time. Thank you for all of the prizes and encouraging remarks. Many of you have inquired if I plan to do another update. I probably will, Once Lisa and James have settled in and we can see if any of these adjustments stick. Fingers crossed. Final update. First and foremost, Lisa and James returned to our neighborhood. They discovered a cute little apartment approximately 10 minutes from Dad's house. It's far smaller than their home in California, but Lisa claims it feels more like home. They've both gotten genuine jobs this time. There are no MLMs in sight. James works for a local company. It turns out that when he's not involved in get-rich-quick schemes, he's quite brilliant with computers. Lisa works as an office manager in a medical practice. The debt repayment plan with Dad is going well so far. They have not missed a single payment, and Lisa has been working additional hours to pay it off faster. I know some people in the comments thought Dad was being overly generous in assisting them, but it was the right decision. Seeing Lisa accept responsibility and seek to correct her mistakes has done more to improve their relationship than any penalty could have. The most significant difference has been in how we handle Dad's care. Lisa and I devised a plan in which we each take turns checking on him and helping out. She handles Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday mornings. Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday afternoons are my available times. We alternate Fridays. It's actually working very well. Dad receives consistent attention, and neither of us feel overwhelmed. Talking about Dad, his condition is, well, it is what it is. The physicians say the drug is slowing the advancement, but we can all see the effects. He currently has more bad days than good. He occasionally gets confused about which of us is which, or believes we are both teenagers again. Even on his roughest days, he appears happy with both of his daughters present. Lisa has been fantastic with him. She has this way of fitting in with whichever historical period he believes he's in, making him feel safe and understood rather than frustrated. Last month, we had a particularly difficult day when Dad couldn't recall that Mom had been unfaithful or that Lisa wasn't biologically his. He kept telling Lisa about their camping vacations when she was younger, and she just went along with it. Later, I discovered her crying in the kitchen and asked if she was all right. She informed me the camping excursions did happen, she just didn't recall them until Dad mentioned them. She claimed that she had spent so many years focusing on what Michael could offer her that she had almost forgotten how much Dad had already done for her. Michael's situation has also evolved. After Lisa's attempt to extract money from him became public, they separated for a few months. Lisa refers to their relationship as a coffee shop relationship. They meet for coffee once a month, keep things light, and avoid discussing money or obligations. It seemed to work well for both of them. Michael has even stopped referring to Lisa as his long-lost daughter, instead calling her simply, Lisa, which feels healthier. The inheritance status has not changed. Dad's will remains the same, with me as the major beneficiary and that education trust for Lisa's future children. However, it no longer feels important. Lisa and I discussed it the other day, and she said something that really resonated with me. She said, the inheritance was never really about the money. It was about who Dad trusted and valued more. I thought getting a bigger share would prove he loved me as much as you. Now I realize I was measuring the wrong thing all along. I realize this all sounds too ideal, like one of those cheesy Hallmark movies where everything works out in the end. Trust me, it is not flawless. Lisa and I still disagree from time to time. Dad still has really bad days. The debt isn't magically erased, and years of pain don't dissipate overnight. But we're all trying to do better. Parents neglected me my whole life, never noticed I moved away, and now they're demanding I return to take over their responsibilities. I'm the youngest of 5, and when I say youngest, I don't mean by a small margin. There's a 7-year difference between me and my next sibling. To be honest, I always felt invisible growing up. My brothers all had their own problems, and I believe my parents assumed that because I wasn't sick or struggling with mental health difficulties like the rest of them, I didn't need them. I'm not trying to play the victim, but this is the truth. The others were constantly in and out of hospitals, attending treatment sessions, and so forth. Meanwhile, I was right there. They call it the glass child, right? You can see me, yet you don't seem to see me. For the most part, I was okay with it. I spent a lot of time alone, playing video games, reading, and keeping to myself. I had to learn how to entertain myself because there was no one else there to do it. It wasn't like I was supposed to care for my siblings or anything. Other individuals have told me that they had to give up their childhoods to care for their siblings and sisters, but that was not the case with me. My folks handled everything, so give credit where it's due. But because I wasn't making problems or living in perpetual crisis mode like my siblings, I sort of slipped through the cracks. I didn't need aid, so I didn't get it. I don't believe my parents did it on purpose. It's simply that when you have 4 children coping with health issues, the healthy one becomes an afterthought. They were constantly so preoccupied with hospital visits, doctor's appointments, and school meetings for the others that I became the kid who didn't cause trouble. And thus didn't get noticed. I was invisible, not in tragic movie scenes, but in a practical we've got our hands full way. When I was approximately 9, I made 2 friends, Mia and Clara, who were in essentially the same situation. Their families were not wonderful either, and we just discovered each other in an unsaid way. We clicked. We knew what it was like to be neglected or left out, and that connected us. They grew to resemble my genuine family more than my own family ever did. We were inseparable throughout high school and remained so even after graduation. We attended college together, graduated together, and then moved to a new state together. It was as if we had created our own small family out of the scraps that our real families could not provide for us. After I left home, my parents and I didn't talk much. That wasn't surprising given how seldom we chatted while I was still living there. My mother would occasionally text me, primarily with small conversation like, "How's school?" or "What are you doing for work?" Our connection was quite surface level, but it was an improvement over my teenage years. Back in high school, we scarcely spoke. I didn't expect much from them, nor did I ask for much. A phone call from my mother last year highlighted how distant I felt from my parents. It was a few days before Thanksgiving, and she called unexpectedly. We never called each other, so I knew something was amiss. I had last spoken to her on the phone about a year before. When she told me the time and location of one of my sister's funerals, I realized how little we had communicated. So she phones and asks what time I'm coming for Thanksgiving. I immediately sat there like, wait, what? Since I had no idea they were doing anything for Thanksgiving. It wasn't like we had a huge family tradition. In fact, in my entire childhood, I can recall only 3 occasions when they attempted to celebrate Thanksgiving or Christmas. It was simply not a thing in my family. I told her that I already had plans. I mean, I was going skiing with Mia and Clara, so I couldn't simply drop everything and come over. Plus, I live 2 states away, and if I were going to come, I would have had to purchase a plane ticket months in advance. But she acted as if I was simply being tough. Then Mother started guilt-tripping me, saying she was going to be alone because my father was going to spend the day seeing my brother in the institution. The institution is a 2-hour drive away, so my father would be gone for the majority of the day. I got it. But she gave me 3 days' notice. 3 days. And I was expected to simply show up and make her feel better? I told her I couldn't come, and she got upset, saying I didn't care about the family or whatever. I emphasized that I already had plans, and she hung up on me. After the call, I sat there for a while, feeling both guilty and irritated. Like, I hadn't heard from them in ages, and now I'm the bad guy for not returning home for Thanksgiving? I scanned over our past texts to ensure I hadn't missed anything, but there was no mention of Thanksgiving or wanting to see me. She threw it on me at the last minute, as if I was meant to drop everything and go. I ended up texting her later that night, stating that I had a ski trip planned for Christmas and wouldn't be able to attend, but I'd love to get up with her and Dad after the new year. You know, trying to be polite about it. She didn't respond. I was still trying to shake off the strange feeling a few days after Thanksgiving. You know when something just bothers you and you can't figure out why? That's how I felt about my mother's attempt to make me feel awful for not coming home. She phones me out of nowhere and guilt trips me for not being there, but she never told me they were celebrating Thanksgiving. It was as if they expected me to be a mind reader. Anyway, by then, I'd very much moved on. I was preparing for a ski trip with Mia and Clara. We had been planning it for months, and I was quite enthusiastic. The 3 of us hadn't taken a good vacation in a long time, so we were excited to just hang out and relax. Then, out of nowhere, I received this text from my father. Now, my father rarely texts me, so I assumed it would be crucial. Instead of saying something fair, he says, "If you don't come home for Christmas, I'm stopping your college payments." At first, I laughed. Like, what? I graduated 3 years ago? What are my payments? It was so unexpected that I had to read it again to ensure I hadn't missed anything. I wondered if he was confused or talking about someone else. So I texted him back, informing him that I had already graduated and that if he thought he was still paying for my tuition, he should check his bank account because someone was scamming him. I assumed that would be the end of it. Honestly, I expected him to feel silly once he realized I wasn't in school anymore. But no. A few hours later, he sends me another text, this one accusing me of being greedy and ungrateful. He said a lot about how much they had sacrificed for me and my brothers, and how I didn't appreciate any of it. Okay, first of all, I never asked them for anything. Second, I had no idea they were paying for my college because my grandmother had already covered it, She told me straight out that she didn't want my parents to interfere with my education, so she took care of everything herself. So, obviously, I had no idea what my father was talking about. At this point, I'm pretty angry. Like, I get if they're stressed out about my siblings, but guilt-tripping me over something they didn't do? That's an entirely new level. So, I responded back as politely as I could, saying something like, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but Grandma paid for my college. I'm happy to catch up after the holidays, but I already have plans." I assumed that would shut it down. But no, my father chooses to go full drama mode and starts texting me about how I've abandoned the family, how I'm turning my back on them, and that he's done helping me if I don't make an effort. By this time, I'm just gazing at my phone, like, what is going on? Have you abandoned the family? I've been living alone for years, and they haven't even noticed. And now I'm the terrible person because I refuse to drop everything and rush back for Christmas. I tried to ignore it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I became increasingly irritated as I thought about it. It was as if they hadn't spoken to me in months, hadn't bothered to check in or ask how I was doing, but when they needed something, it was my obligation to put things right. I was supposed to be their backup, or something. I called Mia and Clara to vent. They both agreed that it sounded like my parents were only using me as a guilt trip. Mia said that they probably wanted me back home for Christmas so they wouldn't feel awful about themselves, not because they wanted to see me. Clara, as usual, did not hold back and bluntly stated, "Screw them, you don't owe them anything." I chose to sleep on it and cool off before answering again. But as I lie there, my phone vibrates again. It's my father. This time, the text is brief and frigid. He says, "If you don't come home, don't bother coming back at all." I read that and felt completely numb. So, how did we get here? How did we go from not speaking for months to virtually disowning me because I wasn't coming to Christmas? It did not even feel real. I looked at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to retaliate and say something horrible. I wanted to confront them about all the times they disregarded me and made me feel as if I didn't exist in that house. However, I did not answer. I put down my phone, rolled over, and attempted to sleep. I didn't want to be dragged into any major family turmoil just before the holidays. I didn't want to cope with the guilt trips, accusations, or whatever else they could throw at me. So I just left it. The next morning, I received more texts, this time from my mother. She didn't say much, just that they were disappointed in me, didn't understand why I was so aloof, and hoped I would reconsider. I couldn't help but giggle a little because far away didn't begin to describe it. I'd been distant all my life, and they were only now noticing? I ignored the texts again and concentrated on preparing for the ski trip. Mia and Clara were excited, and I was too. It felt like the ideal vacation from all the family drama. We left the next day, and for the first time in a long time, I forgot about my parents. I did not feel guilty. I did not feel sorry. I simply felt free. Of course, things couldn't remain peaceful indefinitely. Just when I thought I'd moved on, I received another message from my mother, this time in the middle of the journey. She was not giving up. She stated that if I did not return home soon, they would have to begin making decisions about the future without me. Decisions that I would not like. That's when something clicked. They were planning something greater than Christmas. Perhaps it had to do with one of my brothers or something about the house. I had no idea what was going on, but it soon became clear why they were pushing so hard. They wanted me back for more than simply the holidays. That knowledge felt like a punch in the belly. All this time, I assumed they were just clinging or lonely. But this was never about me. Not really. It was about what they could get out of me. I was finished. So after that whole drama with my folks trying to guilt trip me, I assumed things would calm down. I ignored their texts, went on the ski vacation, and tried to remember that I had my own life and goals, and I was not going to let them drag me back into their world of guilt and expectations. But, of course, it was not so easy. I was back home, just getting back into my routine, when I received a message from my older brother Jake. Now, I hadn't spoken to Jake in months, probably longer. Jake was the one sibling who, as we grew older, I thought would understand me. He wasn't as sick as my other brothers, so I always assumed we may have had something more. But he was always too caught up in his own life. Whatever. Anyway, seeing his name appear on my phone astonished me. His message was straightforward. "Hey, we need to talk." I had no idea what he wanted, but I was not in the mood for more family turmoil. I said, "About what?" A few minutes later, he calls me. I contemplated whether to respond, but curiosity got the best of me. So I pick up the phone, and before I can say hey, Jake dives right into it. Mom and Dad have been talking about making you the legal guardian for one of the boys when they're gone. I swear I almost dropped my phone. My heart was beating, and I sat there shocked for a few seconds. Was this some sort of joke? Like, after all these years of hardly being present in my life, they're just going to put this obligation onto me? What the hell are you talking about? I eventually managed to ask. Jake sighed, as if I were the one acting ridiculous. You know how things are with Mom and Dad. They've got a lot on their plate with the other boys, and they're not going to be around forever. They need to know someone's going to step up and take care of things when they're gone. I could feel my blood boiling. And they think that someone is me? After everything? After all the ignoring and guilt tripping, they just assume I'm going to drop everything and take over their mess. Jake didn't seem to get why I was unhappy. Look, I know it's a lot, but you're the only one who's really stable. The rest of us, we've got our own issues. I nearly laughed. Yeah? Well, maybe you guys should have thought about that before now. I didn't even know this was a thing. They never told me they were going to talk to you about it, said the man, but I figured you should know before they tried to spring it on you. I was pissed. This wasn't just about Christmas or Thanksgiving anymore, it was bigger. They were preparing something long-term, and they hadn't thought to contact me until now, when it was convenient for them. They hadn't spoken to me in years, and now they expected me to take responsibility? Just no. So, what? They've been discussing this behind my back, I questioned, still trying to figure it out. Like they just decided I'd take on the responsibility without even asking me? Yeah, pretty much, Jake agreed. They've been planning it for a while. I sat in silence for a minute, staring at the wall and trying to digest everything. Part of me wanted to shout at Jake, but I knew it wasn't his fault, he was simply the messenger. But that didn't change the fact that my parents were ready to screw me down big time. They weren't simply asking for a favor, they asked me to spend the rest of my life cleaning up after them. I was done being invisible, but I wasn't going to be their backup plan now. So, what am I supposed to do? I inquired, feeling more discouraged than anything. Just drop my whole life and move back home? Give up everything I've worked for? Jake did not have an answer for that. He attempted to talk about how difficult things were for our parents, how they were straining to keep up with my brother's care, but I didn't care. I had spent my entire life being shunted to the sidelines because I was not a problem. Now they wanted to utilize me since I was the only one who had my life in order. It was unfair. I'm not doing it, I responded, interrupting him mid-sentence. I'm not going to be their backup. They didn't give a crap about me for the last 25 years, and they sure as hell don't get to make me responsible for everyone now. Jake remained silent for a moment, then said, I get it. I do. But you're still part of the family. Family. This word made me want to shout. Yes, I was a member of the family, but only when it was convenient for them, only when they needed it. When I was younger, they didn't care if I was fine or if I needed assistance. But now that they were afraid of what the future contained, I was exactly what they needed. Tell them I'm not interested, I replied. And don't bother calling me about this again. I hung up before Jake could reply. For a long, I sat there, staring at the phone, trying to relax. I felt as if my entire life had been leading up to this moment, this time when I'd finally had it. Enough with the guilt trips. Enough with the deceptive texts. Enough with being ignored and then used. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. Jake and my parents did not contact me for several days. It was almost as if they were waiting for me to wake up, to alter my opinion, and to be the good daughter they had suddenly decided I should be. But I wasn't about to move. I was not going to let them throw their issues on me simply because I was the last one standing. Then a letter arrived in the mail. It was from my mother. She hadn't even called. She had simply sent a letter, as if we were living in the 1800s or something. The letter was lengthy and rambling, full of the same guilt-tripping nonsense I'd heard before. She went on about how much they needed me, how difficult things were for them, and how they had no idea what they would do if I didn't help. The final part, however, irritated me greatly. My mother wrote, "We're not asking for much, Olivia. We just need to know that when we're gone, someone will step up for the family." That's when I recognized what this was all about. They didn't care about me. They just worried about making sure their mess was cleaned up after they left. They didn't want me back because they miss or love me. They wanted me because I was convenient and the only one who hadn't broken apart. I crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. I was finished. Update 1. After receiving that letter from my mother, I believed I had reached my limit. What else could they throw at me that I hadn't seen? I was already tired of their guilt trips, manipulations, and attempts to hold me accountable for their mess. But of course, I was mistaken. It wasn't finished, not even close. A week or two after I discarded the letter, I received another call. This time, it came from a number I did not recognize. I almost didn't pick up, but something inside me was intrigued. Maybe it was Jake again, or one of my parents trying a different number after I ignored theirs. Regardless, I took up. "Hey, Olivia, it's Sarah." Now Sarah is one of my sisters. We were never very close. I mean, she was constantly dealing with her own issues, hospitals, therapists, everything. I felt sorry for her growing up, but I didn't truly know her. We were essentially strangers living under the same house. So hearing from her now, after everything, seems strange. Hey, I replied, unsure where this was going. "Look," she said. "I know things have been kind of rough between you and Mom and Dad, but I really need you to listen to what I'm going to say." I could already feel my stomach dropping. I thought, here it comes. Increased guilt. More attempts to draw me back in. "What is it?" I inquired, attempting to seem impartial while bracing myself for whatever was coming. She took a big breath and said, "They're not doing well. Like, really not doing well. Dad's health is going downhill fast, and they're freaking out because no one's stepping up to help with the boys. They're scared, Olivia. They don't know what to do." I did not say anything for a second. It's not that I didn't care, I did. I did not want to see anyone suffer, including my parents. But after everything, after years of them not caring about me, I couldn't simply jump in and fix things for them. I was not their band-aid. "I'm sorry to hear that," I stated with great care. "But I can't just drop everything. I have a life too, Sarah." She sighed, clearly frustrated. "I get that, but you're the only one who's in a position to help. Jake's barely holding it together, and you know what's going on with me and the others. There's no one else, Olivia." Desperate because they ignored this for years, I shot back, feeling my fury rise again. They let this all build up, thinking it would just go away. And now, because I'm the one who managed to get out and make something of my life, it's my responsibility. That's not fair, Sarah. "I know it's not fair," she continued slowly. "But this is where we are. They need help." And there it was again. Same old story. Same old guilt. No matter what I did or how far I tried to get away from it, they always found a way to bring me back. I could feel the strain growing inside me, the fury and animosity that had been simmering for years coming to a head. "I'm not doing it," I responded, my tone harder than intended. "I'm not going to be the one to clean up their mess. They didn't care about me when I was a kid, and they sure as hell don't get to come to me now just because it's convenient. I've got my own life. They need to figure this out themselves." When Sarah spoke again, I could tell she was hurt. "I get it, Olivia. I really do. But this isn't about you or me. It's about the family. It's about what's going to happen to the boys when they're gone. If we don't step up, who will?" That hit me hard. Not because I suddenly felt responsible, but because it reminded me of how imprisoned we all were. My parents had neglected me for years, forcing me to the sidelines, and now they were attempting to use me as an escape plan. And what about my siblings? They were caught in the thick of it all, just like I was. Only they lacked the strength to fight back. "I'm sorry," I repeated, gentler this time. "But I can't. I won't." There was a long silence, and I could sense her disappointment over the phone. But I was not going to give up. Not this time. I could not. "Okay," she finally said, her voice lifeless. "I'll tell them." She hung up before I could say anything further. I sat there for a while, staring at my phone, feeling both relieved and guilty. I was well aware that I owed nothing to my parents. But it still ached. It stung knowing that my family was falling apart and that I had no control over it. Perhaps I wasn't powerless. Perhaps I was no longer willing to sacrifice myself for them. A few days later, I received another letter from my mother. This time, things were considerably worse. She didn't even bother with greetings. She went straight to the guilt trip. She wrote about how disappointed she was in me, how I had let the family down, and how she couldn't believe I would abandon them in their time of need. She tossed in a lot of things about how difficult it was for her and my father, how much they'd suffered for us, and how she didn't know what she'd done to deserve such a selfish daughter. It was brutal, and for a little while, it worked. I felt that old, familiar sting of shame, the guilt I had felt my entire childhood. But then I remembered all the years I'd spent being invisible, all the times they'd forgotten about me, and all the times I needed them but they weren't available. And I knew it wasn't because they needed aid. This was about control. This was about them attempting to draw me back into their web, making me feel as if I owed them something. But I owed them nothing. Not anymore. I crumpled the letter and put it in the trash, just like the previous one. I was finished. I was done being their pawn. I was done allowing them to influence me. I had my own life now, and I was not going to let them take it away. The following day, I blocked their numbers. I also blocked Jake, just to be cautious. It was not an easy decision, but it was the only one that seemed right. I couldn't keep letting them bring me down and make me feel responsible for their troubles. They'd made their decisions, and now they had to live with them. For the first time in a long while, I felt liberated. Update 2. Blocking their numbers seemed like a relief, like a big weight had been removed from my shoulders. For the first time, ever, I had control of the situation. I wasn't sitting there expecting another guilt-inducing message from my mother or a surprise call from Jake. It was quiet. Peaceful. But, of course, that did not endure. About 2 weeks after I blocked them, I received a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and honestly, I assumed it was a delivery or anything. But, as I opened the door, there she was, my mother. Standing on my porch, as if she had every right to be there. I'm not sure how she found me. I hadn't exactly been hiding, but I didn't expect her to just walk up at my apartment. She looked different. I suppose I'm older now. Or perhaps it was just stress. In any case, I could see she'd had a difficult time. But I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. "What are you doing here?" I inquired, keeping my voice as calm as I could. She did not respond right away. She stood there staring at me as if she didn't recognize me. Eventually, she spoke. "We need to talk, Olivia?" I exhaled. "No, we really don't. I've said everything I needed to say. I've made my decision." She took a step forward, as if she was about to enter, but I stood in the doorway and blocked her. I was not going to let her in and turn this into another guilt trip. "Please, just listen," she continued, her tone softening. "Your father's getting worse. He's in and out of the hospital, and we don't know how much time he has left. I don't know what to do, Olivia." There it was. The card she'd been hoping to play. The "your father is dying" card. She didn't state anything directly, but I knew she was hinting at it, and I am not heartless. I did not want my father to suffer. But after everything they'd put me through, I couldn't just abandon everything and rush to their side. "I'm sorry," I murmured, trying to keep my voice steady. "But this isn't my problem. You and Dad have had years to figure this out. You can't just show up now and expect me to fix everything." She looked at me as if I had hit her. "I'm not asking you to fix anything, I just need you to be there, for the family." "For the family?" I asked, nearly laughing. "What family? The one that ignored me for 25 years? The one that only talks to me when they need something? That's not a family, Mom. That's just manipulation." Her eyes widened, and I wondered whether she was going to disagree with me. But instead, she started crying right there on my doorstep. She burst into sobs, and I didn't know what to do. I wasn't going to welcome her in, but I also couldn't stand there and watch her cry. "Look," I whispered softly. "I completely understand how difficult this is for you. But I am not your backup plan. I'm not the person who will step in and make things right. You made your decisions, and now you must live with them." She dried her eyes and looked up at me, and I could see the rage begin to replace the sadness. "We did our best, Olivia. You don't comprehend what it was like to raise all of you and deal with everything. We didn't have time for you since we were focused on keeping everyone else alive." There it was. This is the excuse. I had heard the same excuse a million times before. "And that's not my fault," I added, my voice firmer. "You made the choice to have 5 children. You choose to focus on everyone else and leave me behind. It was your decision, not mine. And now you're making me feel guilty about it? I will not do that, Mom. I will not." She stood there for a long time, not saying anything and staring at me as if she didn't recognize me anymore. And perhaps she didn't. Maybe in her mind, I was still the tiny kid she could overlook because I wasn't causing a problem. But I wasn't that kid anymore. I was done being invisible. Eventually, she spoke. "Is that it? Will you simply ignore us?" I shake my head. "Number you turned away from me a long time ago. I'm finally walking away." She had nothing to say about that. She just turned and walked away, returning to her car. I watched her leave, experiencing an odd combination of feelings. Part of me was sad, but the majority of me felt liberated, as if I'd finally let go of something I'd been holding for years. Something I should have let go of long ago. After she departed, I went back inside and sat down, trying to digest what had just transpired. I wasn't angry anymore. I was not even hurt. I was just finished. I'm done with the guilt, the manipulation, and the continual feeling that I wasn't enough. I was not going to be their backup plan. I was not going to be their last option. I had my own life to live, and I was not going to let them drag me down any longer. The following couple weeks were quiet. I didn't hear from anyone, no calls, letters, or anything. And, honestly, that was the best I had felt in a long time. I focused on my career, my friends, and my life. I wasn't glancing over my shoulder, waiting for their next communication. I was no longer living in the shadow of their expectations. Then, approximately a month later, I received an email. This time, it's from Jake rather than my mother or father. It was brief, only a few sentences, but it contained everything I needed to know. Dad passed away last night. I thought you should know. I stared at the email for a long time, unsure how to react. I wasn't astonished, I knew it was coming. But I did not feel sorry either. I didn't feel much of anything. I considered answering. I considered calling Jake, asking how he was doing, and maybe even giving my condolences. But then I realized that this was simply another stage in the same cycle. Another opportunity for them to bring me back in. And I was not going to fall for it this time. I closed the email without responding and continued on with my day. I wasn't a part of their world anymore, and I was finally comfortable with it.